Hey guys!
Hey, welcome.
Hello, my name is Courtney Webb and I am the Strange.
And I'm Michael Zinn, and I am the wonderful.
And we are the Strange and
Strange and
Wonderful.
wonderful.
Welcome back
Yes.
again. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is your 12th, second, I don't know how many other times, welcome back.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I see you got your hair cut there. Very
Yes,
nice.
I did. Hang on. There it is.
Look at that. Beautiful.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
I'm just gonna ask you to move over. I'm gonna switch sides with you. Oh, there we go. Cool.
That's
I feel
me.
like that's the way we're usually set
You're
up.
like,
So
what's going on?
we were backwards from normal. Yeah, so you are watching The Strange and Wonderful. This show is about bringing on some extraordinary, strange and wonderful people, having conversation, getting to know them, getting to create some space for them to share with anybody who's interested in the strange and wonderful. And you guys know already, it's been an amazing ride for me. I thank Courtney every week for coming up with this and bringing on the wonderful guests that she's bringing on. And it's actually pretty cool because I just assumed from working with you, Courtney, that you were bringing on people from like your circle. It seemed at the beginning
Yeah.
like it was people that you knew, but you started to actually reach out to people who are inspirational to you, and ask them to be on the show, and a couple of them have agreed, and it's been amazing to have the conversations. And
I mean, I'm surprised too, because hell yeah, I'll be on your show.
listen, you know what I mean, that's how I felt when I interviewed Tommy Chong. You know what I mean? He's somebody who I watched growing up as a kid, and a friend of mine said, hey, I got contact for him, and maybe he'll be on your show. And that was amazing. So it's I love the way that this show crosses over with the live stream in the way that it's about intention and living through intention. The people that we talk to are all so amazing, and I tried to figure out why am I expanding, why is my brain expanding, why is this show so amazing to me. And I realized that everybody that we talk to is living through in like serious intention, much more intention than most people are get to experience. They know who they want to be, and they put it into practice, and they are who they want to be. And man, it's so beautiful, and it feels so good to get to know these people. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You kept on cutting out on my end, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're having some bandwidth issues. I see
Yeah, I mean,
you're
there's a
stuttering a
storm
little. Let me
coming
let me
too.
see. Let me
Yeah,
let me take a quick look if it's me or you. I don't think it's me. I can
I
go
think it's
to
me
yeah,
because there's a storm coming
fast.com
and
tells me how
everything.
how yeah. I think
Okay.
I'm pretty much my normal
Yeah, I'm
speed.
connected.
So
Okay, we're good.
all
Sorry,
right.
y'all.
Well,
Sorry for the
hopefully,
technical difficulties.
so we have been experiencing a few of those lately, but most of the time the show goes pretty smooth. So hopefully you'll be able to respond and hear the conversation. It seems like you're probably getting a little bit of lag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so,
Oh,
but
I see
anyway,
we got a comment in the. I see we got a comment in the comments.
oh,
Comment in
look
the
at that.
comments. Yeah, we got a comment.
It's Mr. Bloxley.
Hey, Mr. Bloxy.
Awesome. What's up,
Yeah,
Mr.
that's my little
Bloxley?
buddy.
That's awesome. Welcome to the strange and wonderful. So,
I told him like yes, yeah, told him yesterday
go
about it.
ahead. I know for a
Hey.
fact that you are excited, and I'm excited. I see you're trying to fix your
Me too.
bandwidth. That's all good.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix it. It just keeps
But
going down one and go back up, and then I'm like, what is going on? Okay, Wi-Fi's on.
yeah, are you on your laptop or on your phone?
I'm on my laptop right now.
Oh wow.
My phone's charging.
You know what? We'll talk about it after the show, but let's see if we can get you a hard wire so you can plug in. Is that possible? You
Yeah.
think?
Maybe moving it a little bit might work.
All right. I'm sorry, hon. I know it's probably frustrating for you. But anyway, I would love to start to introduce tonight's guest because it's amazing again how this show it turns out, and you know what, I think I'm lagging a bit too. So you stay here.
Okay.
I'm going to refresh my browser. I'll have you refresh your browser. And we'll
Yeah,
see
maybe try that. Hang on.
what goes on. And our guest is
I'm
waiting.
going to leave the studio real quick. Let me see if
No, don't leave the studio. Don't leave the studio.
No. Okay. Okay. Here we go. I do apologize for this, y'all. We've been having technical difficulties. But how y'all been doing today? Okay. Mr. Blackfleet, what did that pasta mean? Okay. See if this works. Okay.
Hey, I'm
Okay.
back, and I think I've got. Let me just see if my movement is good. Yeah, I'm good. You're
yeah,
not
it's your
lagging.
voice. It keeps cutting in and out.
Okay, so I'm seeing you. Hold on. I gotta switch our sides again. Boom. All right. So I'm hoping our guest is going to be able to hear us without too much lag. We got IC00 back in the house. Welcome from last week with our AI conversation. Glad to see you back. So here we go. Back on track, folks. Sorry for the technical difficulties. If you are experiencing that still and hearing me choppy, let me know in the chat room so we can do something to fix it. I think that we're okay now. So I'm going to continue. I see our guest in the background, and I see that he's also not laggy. So I'm going to just talk about how, again, this show is amazing, and we've manifested this for ourselves, Courtney, and it's amazing. The mic is buzzy, I hear that, but as long as it's not breaking up, we should be good. So I was talking about how you were getting some amazing guests, and super excited. And tonight's guest is internationally known. If you have either seen this guy and liked him or not liked him or whatever, but Erik Sprague is internationally known as the Lizardman, and we have him here tonight. And here he is. Welcome to the show.
It's me! Yay!
Oh, so
Welcome
excited to see you,
show.
man. Awesome. Sorry about those technical difficulties. I think I fixed it. There was probably one or two things running on my machine that shouldn't have been, but we're good now.
All part of the process.
Yes, all part of the process. So
yes, you think about you know how people use like video filters now to add like the bands from VCRs and stuff to video to put it back, or to make vinyl sound, they add a crackle to it.
Right.
Well, in however many years, people are going to have to add the podcast like chart out, and
right.
they'll have to add that as an effect because we'll have worked it out too well. We'll finally have a compression rate that works, and bandwidth will be not an issue, and all this. So people will artificially ruin their product.
Right. The lag filter. That's brilliant, man. That's wonderful. You know what? And that's why I was excited to talk to you, because I had a feeling that you had a very unique brain and a unique way of looking at things.
That's a nice way of saying did a lot of acid, but sure.
You know what? And these days they're starting to say that may not be such a bad thing. You know
what's funny, and to me now, I'll put this in context. Like, I'm 50 years old, and so it's older than a lot of people expect me to be. So a lot of my reference, until you start listening to like the references I make and things like that. So like when I was a kid, and granted I was a little bit young for the time I was getting into sort of counterculture stuff, right? It was the late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
sort of later elementary school, beginning of junior high for me, where I was getting into a lot of this stuff. And, what I have seen in my life since then, like the 40 years since, is that the counterculture people keep getting proven right again and again and again about, no, that was a lie. No, that's totally misleading. No, if you do this right, if you respect it, there are ways to do a lot of things that we're just so, and it's because it's an easy thing to figure out sort of the motivationally is, and from a societal point of view, it makes sense. It's just like when you're in a class, if you're the teacher, right, you teach to the slowest student. Well, when you're a government, you make laws for the slowest citizens, right? Because not everybody can be trusted to be responsible. We have to have laws and rules that tell you how you will act, or else we will put you in the bad place or do whatever else, or take some of your money, however it goes. But it's like, yeah, that's really what that comes down to.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's just such a unique way of looking at what's going on in the world. And so, man, it's funny because I did a little bit of research. I was looking at your website just so I had a little bit of background.
I perpetually in redesign and rework website. Yes.
It's all good. It's all good. I figured if everything went well and I liked you, that we would talk about it afterwards. So maybe we'll talk about it afterwards. But I saw there was one question on there that said, are you religious or spiritual? And it said no, and I don't want to hear about your beliefs either, which is cool. So I didn't want to get into too much spiritual conversation, but again, there's so much crossover with it, and it may not even be looked at as spiritual, kind of the way. And this is what I said about like explaining spirituality on like just this level, which is so easy, like you give what you get kind of thing. That's a simple thing to understand. It's not necessarily overly spiritual, but
well, here's the thing about it. Keep in mind, and I hope this comes through on the website. I mean, sometimes it's always hard with text, but there is very much a sort of wink and ha-ha, sort of humor to everything that is there, or there's intended to be. And it's just a matter of the exhaustion with evangelicalism in any form. And I tend to be a magnet for those sort of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be, evangelical Christianity but it's basically people with, like you say, very, very firm, concrete spiritual beliefs who very much want to communicate with other people seem to zoom in on me as audience. And
they've got something to tell you.
That sort of aspect in that frequently asked questions part of my website is just my sort of way of saying, like, hey, if I don't know you, this isn't a conversation that we're going to have. This is not the sort of thing I want to get into with strangers.
Right.
And I have a degree in philosophy. I did comparative religion for a long time. It's not something that I'm not well versed in. On the contrary, it's something that I'm actually exhausted with.
I understand.
I get you.
Because from what I see, people's like, well, I get tattoos all the time. I'm like satanic. Like, who told you he's not satanic at all? No.
Well, but the other side of it too, there are people who have found a spirituality, which is great. If you find something that works for you, I got no issue with that. If it doesn't hurt anybody else, all the usual caveats, right?
I'm happy for you, right?
That's great. But you can keep that to yourself no matter what it is. But because a lot of people find that in body modification, they want other, and when you find, it's like whether you find that in tattooing or golf or singing, it doesn't matter where you find it. You want that. It's very typical for people, especially early on, to want other people who are into that activity to connect with it the same way.
Right.
And that's how we get these in and out groups formed. It's like hey, just because we both like tattoos doesn't mean we have to agree on anything else. And it shouldn't upset you if we don't.
Right. Wow. Again, very wise, very, very perceptive.
Okay.
And
I don't know if y'all know. I know Michael knows. But I got dog joints on my knees.
Oh, wow. That's wild. Yeah. So exactly like, you mean like structurally your knee is built that way? Or is there something additional?
Hang on.
Just tattoos, but she's
tattooed on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about an actual physical
right
abnormality.
Right.
Because I've worked with people who have highly abnormal knees.
Sure. And here's an interesting connection that I have to you is that I worked for a couple of years for world famous Tattoo Inc.
Okay.
As a graphic designer, and I did a lot of the banners and the signage at their trade shows. So they did,
that's great. Wow.
They did the tattoo convention. So I would be at the tattoo conventions. I don't think I got a chance to actually talk to you. You may have passed by me, or I may have seen you.
Right. It was a tattoo convention. I was probably drunkenly staggering down the aisle past the booth.
But you know, I have always been kind of.
I feel like a cam wheel. Hang on.
Oh, you're trying to get your knees onto the screen. I have always been intrigued by tattoos just because I'm an artist and as a visual art thing. And then modification.
I'm always amazed artistically when someone who's artistically inclined isn't into tattooing, because just as a medium, even if it's not one that you would end up exploring yourself, I can't imagine, you know, like I say, as a young artist or someone, you know, involved in art or just looking across things, like, unless you've already said, like, I'm only an oil painter or I'm only acrylics or something like that. If you're at that stage, whatever, then I get it. You don't care. But I'm like, early on, I can't see how you would miss the appeal and basically the power of it. I mean, Spider Webb, who we just lost, he just recently passed away on the 4th, was one of these people who was visionary in that regard and really brought, you know, tattooing into, you know, what we sort of think of as the art world today by making it, you know, by tying in these conceptual elements and the intention and just, you know, so much more. But yeah, there's that, you know, again, that aspect, you know, of like what people put into it there and then expect of others to put in as well.
Sorry, I have left the conversation, but I just changed my pants.
No, I see what you mean. Now I understand what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. And Courtney is very much into the doll culture. What is it called, the group that you're in, Courtney?
The people that like dress up with dolls, or the people that in relationship with dolls?
In the relationships with the dolls.
They are called idols.
Right. So there, you know, this is what really, again, I was saying, kind of really drew me right into this show as such a way to connect with people and, again, talk to people who are so connected to their own, what they want to be, and so committed to it that, you know, I feel like so drawn to that because it's so authentic. And so I was showing somebody today some pictures of you saying, "Oh, I can't wait. I'm having Erik on the show. I'm super excited." And they were like, "Oh my God," you know, they reacted like, I'm sure you've seen reactions to you.
I get visceral reactions.
Absolutely. And I started to try to explain, like, no, you don't understand. This is amazing. This person is living, and it was before I met you, and so I say this person, but this person is living with such clear intentions, and I feel it. And the response was, no, they made a choice to like immediately cut this part of the population off to even talk to them. And I'm like, but that's conscious, because he doesn't have time for people who are going to look at him and not accept him because they're not at this level of love and unconditional love that he's at. You know what I mean? So, you know, again, I mean, I don't know what your intentions are with that, but in a way, I mean, I kind of went to your defense because I related to you. You know what I mean? I related to who.
Well, and that is the ultimately, for me, if you want to call it a strategy or even a weapon or whatever, the best thing is that the fact that I can find a way to relate and express myself. Generally, people, it's not, like I say, I don't have a hard time usually making connections with people if they give me the opportunity, right? If someone's just sort of closed out, like some people do just want to shout back at you, yell and scream back, sort of thing like that. But anyone who's willing to stop and listen, there's, you know, and I have, like I said, I'm older than people expect to, which I think throws off a lot of people just immediately because they expect to be dealing with an angry teenager. Right. And I was angry as hell as a teenager. You're damn right, but I wasn't yet this. Not even close. This came much later, and that throws people too. It throws them that it was a planned and decision. But once I get them thinking and asking the right questions, then they get which leads them to the right answers, and they start to relate, and they start to see things. And because there's a lot of stuff in my life that people don't sort of get immediately, and I understand you wouldn't get it. You don't look at me and go, oh, he's a green kid, that all of your guesses, all of the stereotypical stuff, whether it's abuse or abandonment are absolutely wrong. It's completely the opposite. I am one of those people who has been very lucky and privileged enough to not only have the breadth of experience that allowed me early on to figure out who I was and what I wanted out of life, but also had the ability and opportunity to pursue that.
Yep.
And, all of those things are rare. A lot of people just, the universe screws them out of a good chance. That's just the way it is.
Right.
And, other people get the chance and aren't able to fully take advantage of it. But, every now and then, somebody, and I got lucky, gets to thread the needle and kind of figure out. And that's where people, I think the thing that people don't get, they're like, oh, it must have been so scary. Like they think in their heads about all the worries they would have if they woke up like me tomorrow morning.
Right.
But when they find out that you don't wake up like me tomorrow morning, that's impossible. No, first it takes years of planning. Then it takes years of execution, right? And it comes out. And there was that. And when I explain that to people, they start to realize, they're like, oh, well, you kind of approach that the way I approached writing my first novel or starting my business, whatever. Like I can find that. And I'm like, yeah, doing what I do, that's what I am. I am a business. My business is being me. Which is, I think, fantastic. It's great.
Amazing. Oh,
what I dreamed of. Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. Like, this person has achieved everybody's dream of being themselves and getting paid for it.
Right. Yeah.
Getting paid just to be who they are. And
I mean, there's a little bit more. It's funny. That's almost, now that I'm listening to somebody else say those words, I'm like, that kind of sounds like a Kardashian or something, like a celebrity thing like that. I'm like, I do feel like at least I did earn it, honestly. I go out into the streets and I give you entertainment. And that's kind of the deal I made with the world, because there was a point in my life where there's a point in many people's lives, but, like I say, again, I was privileged enough. I was white, hetero, middle class, male, dad, decorated military career and an educator, mom an educator, full scholarship, go to college, get a degree. All right, what the hell are you going to do with your life? Because you really do have the option to do absolutely anything. And there was, in that moment, there's sort of like, and I, played around for a year after college, warehouse jobs, and went out into the world, became a karate instructor, got a black belt, did a bunch of stuff, which, sort of reaffirmed some ideas and beliefs, and, stripped away others, get that real world experience, take some of the edges off you. But anyway, I end up at this point where I'm like, wait, if I can do absolutely anything, why not get wacky with it? Why not shoot the moon? Like, really say, like, because one of the things that was very apparent to me then, and now I try to tell people, there's like, it's really, really hard to screw up your life. You think people will tell you that it's easy, that it's only one decision, like that, but that's not. That's stumbling and falling. Like that's, people will pick you back up. Like screwing up your life. I know people that spent 20 years on meth that are now better business bureau members. They're hugely successful people. It's like it's really easy to get low, but to truly screw up, short of dying, is difficult, because there's always somebody who's going to be willing to help you back up, and there's always opportunity. In fact, I mean, I look around, I see people love redemption stories. Everybody gets behind the dude who's like, man, I got off drugs and I'm trying to do it, or I stopped drinking and do it. I'm like, yeah, man, you can. People will warn you over and over again about screwing up. If you're young, get the screwing up out of the way. Right. Same thing, but that's the standard financial advice that's out there now, right? If you're going to make a bad decision, make it early, because you have a long time to recover with your investments. Well, that's not just investing. That is everything in life. If you're young, you have longer to recover from it. So if you're going to do something stupid, do it now.
Right. So when did you make this decision?
I had what I usually refer to as the idea, when I was really thinking about what I am now in terms of like body modification and sideshow acts and things like that, started to coalesce when I was about 18. Wow. But it was just this idea about body transformation that was inspired by seeing full body tattooing and by old sideshow attractions and circus acts. And so over the next few years, it was an idea that I would play with and come back to. By 1994, when before I turned 22 that year, so earlier in that year, I actually started. I got to the point where I'd worked out how I was going to do tattooing on my body that I could cover. Basically a lot of the black work, like if you see on my shoulders. And
Right.
Because I didn't know how far. Like at this point, my career now was beyond fantasy back then. It just not even vaguely realistic. If you had said to me, if you'd said to anyone at that time, I was like, well, hey, maybe in the 2000s, you could be completely tattooed, doing sideshow acts, hosting a rock tour, traveling around the country. If you're like, okay, can I buy some pot from you? Yeah, it would be that level of a silly idea, or back in 1990, especially. But as I, to a point, like I said, I ended up going back to graduate school in 1996. And at that point, it's about 2 years I've been getting tattooed and, like I say, kind of bouncing around, bartending, teaching karate, coaching rugby, working in warehouses, all sorts of different things. But picking up more and more tattoo work, getting more and more piercings at that time, just basically getting into body modification a little bit more. That's when I really started to learn more and to get a deeper interest in it. Because my initial idea back when I was 18 was just tattooing, because I didn't really have much experience of anything else.
Right.
But
body modification was pretty young back then too.
Especially mainstream culture. And another thing to keep in mind, especially for me, is that I come from, especially at that time, like I'm a military family, so we moved around. But we moved around when I was like a toddler, from like kindergarten to graduating high school. I was in a little town called Ellenburg, New York. It was only 1,500 people, and most of them geriatric. And we're talking, this is, party line, landline. So like, it's insane I can't even take someone camping and show them the level of everyday technology that I lived with back then, because camping is too advanced today. Right. Wow. People will bring devices with them. I'll be like, no, you understand. Basically just go into the woods.
Right.
Don't take it. And that's where I grew up in a log cabin built by my mom and dad. Wow. in 25 acres of pine forest. They recently just sold it. So I was back up there. It's up on the Canadian border, right on the border of Quebec. And it's, that's, most people would look at this as sort of uninhabitable country. And that's where I grew up. We had a sled dog team. My dad and I, as a kid, raced them. We did sled dog races, and we would actually. The school was a mile away from the cabin, and we would take the sleds through the pastures and the dairy farm fields down to the school sometimes in the winter.
Wow, that's so cool. I gotta say, I was thinking about this for the last 2 days, and all of these things that I kind of thought are. I think I was pretty intuitive about who you are and what your intention was and all of that stuff. And I don't know why, because I would have probably been like, oh, maybe he's an angry kid. I mean, I guess I knew you've been around for a little while, you know what I mean? So I guess I knew you probably were a little closer to my age. I'm a little bit older than you, but but again, I mean, I just knew that talking to you was going to be talking to somebody really articulate, really kind of with deep, interesting experiences. So it's great to hear you came from such humble. That was the word I was thinking. I'm like, this guy's probably so humble and lives such a simple life, you know what I mean? So, but I do want to talk about, and Courtney, I know you've got some questions. Courtney's always got the interview questions ready. But this goes to your awesome background there, and that is the whole sideshow aspect of your life. Now,
right.
I feel like that kind of influenced you, or is it the other way around? Your idea of the tattooing got you into the sideshowing?
Well,
or did you already do that?
It kind of, there's a weird swirl. Like, I mean, I probably just I say to people, like, if you're not 18, try to remember what your brain was like when you were 18. All right. And if you weren't an 18-year-old artist into weird stuff that everybody else thought was stupid, then try to put your brain, imagine that sort of thing. So we're, it's like, it's not even every other day. It's every other hour. Something is the newest, greatest inspiration in your life. Like, oh my God, my mind is blown. I know exactly what I'm going to do. oh wait, have you seen that? Like,
Right.
yeah, and and yeah, it's if it's not, I think you could get it. You could get a pretty good diagnosis for ADHD just by impersonating an 18-year-old artist, being inspired by what's around them, because that's
totally.
It looks like. So I used to do this thing where I would walk around libraries and just sort of randomly take a book off the shelf from here, and flip through it, or if I saw one that looked interesting, check it out and see what it is. So I was doing that in the college library, and I pulled off this book on Japanese tattooing. And, I wasn't a complete idiot from the sticks. I knew what tattooing was. I had heard of it, but I had never in my life seen full body Japanese work by masters, and just the singular concepts they executed, working with the flow of the body. Like, I had seen jail tattoos and military tattoos.
Right. Much different, yeah.
Yeah, and nobody who I had seen with a tattoo had been someone you would ever want to be, right? I never looked at as a kid, the people I saw with tattoos were mainly like jailhouse, or somebody who got like farmer's kid who got bored. I knew a kid who poked a bad rose into the back of his hand. And I'm not looking at these people being like, that's a dude I'm going to model my behavior after. I'm going to be like them. Right. No, but now I see these beautiful canvases. I'm like, who wouldn't want that? Right. It was like if I walked into a gallery, right, and saw a beautiful painting, and it turned around like, who would not want this painting hanging on their wall, right? It was like, when I saw that, I was like, that was it. I knew I wanted to get tattooed, but I didn't want Japanese tattooing, right? It wasn't. I'm not, and it's not because I was, so advanced in my thinking that I wasn't going to culturally appropriate. It was just that I didn't like it. It wasn't like for me.
Right.
Like, it's beautiful, but why am I going to be the white boy covered in dragons and tigers? That's not
right. Well, I see you like the more of the tribal kind of.
Well, what's usually referred to as tribal. I mean, I've always referred to it as my non-representational black geometric patterns.
Yeah, great. No,
awesome. But I use them as markings because I wanted to break up the pattern of the scales, and they were an opportunity. Like when I was designing ideas, first I just went through all sorts of ideas, not even just reptilian. I had, I'll do a maze over my whole body. I'll do a novel over my whole body. I'll do polka dots or different emblems, or, skulls, like zombie ideas. And we've seen, Rico, Zombie Boy, rest in peace. He's probably the most recent famous person to do that. But when I actually got to the point where I'd kind of figured out what I wanted to do, then I was like, they said, there was a point where I was like, maybe I'll go elbows to knees, do the whole under plain clothes thing, because there was a point where I wasn't quite sure. I thought I was still probably going to end up being a professor. I went to grad school, and, and that sort of going to grad school put me in a position towards the end of that first year where I was like, I'm going to need to make a decision about, am I going to go for this now because it's kind of a now or never life thing, or am I going to accept that this was just a weird fantasy of a weird art kid that almost happened but didn't?
Right.
And so I made the decision that it would. But part of that was finding stuff I could do that would stay underneath. So even before that, because you can't just say, and I say this as someone with several hundred hours of tattoo work on them, you could say whatever you want about what your plans are. Until that needle is hitting your skin, you don't know if you can take it. You don't know if you're going to finish the session before you have one. You don't know if you can go another session. Like, you might come in and be like, yeah, and be like, okay, I can take it. And be like, okay, again tomorrow. And your brain, and some people's brain just go, oh no, not so soon, not again tomorrow. I'm like, look, technically everybody should be able to do what I've done, but the fact remains is that a lot of people just wouldn't or would give up. And there's a lot of things like that where I could say, like, I can run a marathon if I want to.
It's like people have different pain tolerance and stuff. Well, the way I got my knees done, I cheated and numbing queen because I knew my knee tattoos was gonna look like a bitch.
It's not cheating. It's not cheating because you're not doing some sort of ritual rite of passage that involves pain or whatever. You're getting a desired effect. It's just one of those things where, the ends do justify the means in this regard. If the ends is you getting the tattoo you want with it, and there's no point for suffering for it. Like, it's not better because it hurt. They can't point to a tattoo and be like, that tattoo's better than that one because that one was done without numbing cream. Shut up.
Exactly. I mean, I did feel half the pain on my knee because the numbing cream wailed off. And I was like,
Yeah, that's it.
I feel half the pain.
Yeah, I don't do well with any sort of anesthetic. I was like, when I was a kid, I had to have a lot of teeth pulled. I had a lot of overcrowding and some extra teeth. And we found out very quickly that Novocaine is only partially effective on me and causes insane swelling that made it just worse for me in a lot of cases. So I'm sort of skeptical of any sort of numbing I don't take aspirin, I don't take painkillers. I've had bad reactions or, best case scenario, lack of effect. And I'm like, if it's not going to really kill the pain, then screw it.
What's the point? Just bail all the pain. Like, yes, I'm ready for this rite of passage of all this pain.
Well, people, I get that, right? There's all this perception like, oh, you must love pain or you must be great at dealing with pain. And I'm like, I mean, I don't love pain, not at all. I would be happy if none of it hurt whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
That said, I would also suffer all the pain again because it means that much to me.
Right.
And that's why I understand why some people, they're like, oh my God, I couldn't take the pain. I'm like, maybe it didn't mean that much to you. So like,
absolutely.
It absolutely sucks. And I don't think it proves any point really to feel the pain, but it is a good gauge of, or it is one gauge of what you're willing to do or what it means to you for it. Yeah.
Right. And again, I know I said this already, but I just have to reiterate, like, for me, and maybe it's just because who I am, I feel like you're a light worker, you know what I mean? And I hate the catchphrases that they're using in spirituality and all that.
I would say I don't even know that phrase as a spirituality.
Okay, but I just feel like, again, through it's all because of your intention. Your intention, it comes through to me so clearly that I never looked at you, even over the years before, I kind of knew where I was at, and said, or maybe I did when I was younger, like, this guy's looking for attention. You know what I mean? Like,
right. The sort of standard dismissals, like that.
Right. And
that's the challenge, is to get by them. Like I mentioned earlier about being able to actually talk to people, or when I do grab their attention, to very quickly be like, hey, there is something more here if you want it. And like I said, and going back to the original sort of topic we opened with about, I don't want to hear about your spiritual beliefs. I'm tired of evangelicals. And but I do try to practice what I preach very much in all regards, but especially in this regard, where I'm like, if you want to know what I'm thinking, if you want to see my show, if you want me to entertain you, if you want to give me a chance to make you laugh, if you want to know what I think about something like that, I am almost always willing to share if it's in a genuine request sort of environment like that. But I am not going to run around and be like, I mean, even if you watch me do street shows and things like that, I break a lot of rules for street performers, and those are the rules that actually help you make more money. But they require you to take on a certain attitude and control performance. Whereas, and I get told by a lot of my friends, I'm friends with by some world-class performers, and their good intention is trying to tell me how to make more money on the street. And my response is, I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to accept less money. I'm going to get out of the way of people. I'm going to make my show small. They're always like, bigger show, bigger hat.
Right.
Well, makes sense. That's anyone can follow that basic economics. That's right. That, but bigger show, bigger hassle, bigger groups of people to go like that. I'm like, smaller show, more relaxed, more fun, better experience for them. I'm trying to win-win. I'm also trying to play a game of less people give more than more people give less. I'm playing the other side of that equation.
Right.
But I mean, and the thing is, like, time and statistics have proven that I'm on the smaller end of the equation. It's always going to be the bigger crowds make the bigger money.
But I feel like, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. I feel like the more effective, side of the equation, because I feel like the connections you do make when someone actually, like this conversation, when someone actually gets to sit and talk to you, I feel like they receive your energy and they know that what your intentions are, and all of that you have worked for, you know what I mean, and how much you've put into what you believe to be who you are. See, it has nothing to even do with what it is that you've done. I like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't even have to talk about your tattoos. It's just your pure, like, this is what I want. This is what I'm doing. I love it.
There's I think part of what you're touching, or what I'm thinking of right now, you just touched on, or we're sort of dancing around a similar sort of thing here, which is the reactions that I tend to get from people, whether they're people who have an idea of me because they've seen Ripley's or TV, but they never really paid attention, but they're like, oh, there's that guy. I knew he existed already, see me person, or someone who just really out of nowhere is like, who is this? What is this? Why is this happening? So it's like, but the way that everyone approaches me, there is a very stark contrast between other people who are heavily modified. Mm-hmm. And I've been, seeing this in action and, hearing about it from other people more and more, over the years and thinking about it. And the only thing that really stands out, the only thing that really works that I've come up with so far is the fact that when people see me, they can immediately or intuitively understand that there's obviously a hole, an intent, like saying an intention. They're like this isn't an accident. It's not a quilt. It's not a patchwork. It took planning and foresight. Like, even if they don't get that, forethought, like they're not consciously thinking like, oh, I wonder how he planned this or that. Like, part of their brain is going, this is a thing, an entire unit, and that's how they take me. As opposed to a lot of my friends I know who have their whole face tattooed, but they get people looking at parts of their tattoo or parts of their face, like that. And I always say, like, people don't treat me like a tattooed person, because I know how tattooed people get. Because before I was complete enough, I did get treated that way.
Gotcha.
But as I filled in enough pieces that people took me in as like a character, as a whole thing, rather than just, oh, this guy with tattoos. Like, I've worked on other side shows and even TV shows with other tattooed attractions, other tattooed men, right? And a couple of tattooed women as well, where I was treated as the Lizardman, which gets its own reaction completely different than the tattooed man or the tattooed woman or the modified person. Like, it's a neat little cheat for shows too, because it allows them to have two of us. Like, normally you would just have me and I'd be your tattooed man and you're the Lizard Man. Right. And I do that. I fill that role when I'm, on a show by myself. But if there's another person already in the show, like when I go visit Coney Island or something like that, they just still go on as the tattooed man or whatever. I'm just the Lizard Man. And like you said, people sense that and they give a different reaction to it. Because I think it, like I say, almost subconsciously communicates, hey, you're not dealing with some random ball of chaos coming at you. Like, right. Intentional thing. Same way, like, if you look at a building, whatever, like, or a monument, so like that had to be built. Like, walking through the woods, you see a structure. Sometimes you're like, okay, somebody made that happen.
Right.
As opposed to, oh, we can curl up over there.
Right. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Courtney in just a second. I just have one or two more questions for you.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I'm loving this. Was there a point that you felt a difference? In other words, as you were tattooing yourself and kind of building this up, you looked more like somebody with tattoos than the Lizard Man, right? So,
right, the bits and pieces, right? So there were years, like early on, where, and especially like while I was in grad school and before I got out of touring, where I was sort of filling in the body of work. And I was a bartender who was known for having a lot of tattoos. Like, my nickname back then from Albany Rugby was Satan. So you're like, hey, Satan, take off your shirt and show this girl your tattoos, right? Take it off, and then I've got all the black stripe work here, and the shoulder pad. These were kind of new back then, and my back piece, which is big black pieces with scales over. And so, there was a point where it was, I was just the guy with tattoos. And then I think it's sort of there's not like a moment, but there's a tipping point in perception where people just stopped caring about the empty spaces, right? Early on when I was like a lot of it was outlined. Like and I used to call myself a giant coloring book.
Right.
I probably got about 300 hours worth of coloring left to do, to fill in the whole thing. Like it was back then, people would be like, "Oh, when are you gonna do that pit? What's that pit? Or how long?" Like that. But as it gets down to smaller and smaller empty pieces, people are just like, "Oh, wow, cool. So you get it finished soon? Maybe you get that." But for the most part, people are just like, "Yeah, you're covered." Filling in my face was a huge deal. Not having any more empty scales there. But when I got my eyelids and my ears done. Ooh. That took away all the non-tattooed skin from the neck up, and that really if you look at old pictures of me from before and after for those two time periods, it's dramatic. It's just amazing that effect that has.
I happen to have a couple of pictures, and I'm hoping you don't mind me.
I don't mind. No, I mean
this one up, but
I wish I had an easy, quick link to throw you for my website. They're all there. But
like I said, I love doing the research and really getting to know who I'm going to be talking to. And I found this one. I was amazed because this was the only one I found with not a lot of tattoo work, and that is this picture right here.
Oh yeah, that's Time magazine.
That's before you even started your face. That's
right. That is very. It's either late '98 or no. That's let's see, because it was taken in Chicago for Time magazine, and I was in Chicago for the Ball of Wax, the fetish event. Where I was performing with TSD, so that would have been '98. Yeah, '98.
Wow, which at this point is 24 years ago. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, it probably would have been about let's see, my implants are there and they're pretty well healed. So I think I got my face outlined probably about 4 to 6 months after this.
Okay. Let me see if I have a couple of other pictures here. I've got
that's about 10 years ago. That's for the Street Performance World Championships in Dublin and Cork.
Awesome. Here's a little more scarier one.
That looks like Ripley's New York City.
Right, and so your chest was not done here.
Yeah, that portion of my chest hadn't been filled in yet.
This picture I love. This is just
if you look at when people.
I love that one.
People always say "Oh, I remember you on Ripley's. You got your face tattooed and all that." But on Ripley's, most of their footage of me is without my face tattooed as well, and there's only some of it with the outline. That's from the cover of a Ripley's book.
Wow,
that one.
Yeah, that's great. And then I'm looking for the picture. I know I grabbed a picture of you at the Ripley's Museum with the wax.
Oh, with one of the statues.
I can't seem to find that particular one. Maybe I grabbed it and dragged it onto my desktop. I don't know what I did. But that picture, I was like, what the heck's going on? There's two of these guys?
There's 30 something of us now. There we go.
So there's 30 wax figures or 30 people?
There's a Lizardman statue at every Ripley's auditorium around the world, which I believe is 33 or 34 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, now I feel so humbled
because
I knew I was talking to somebody who was internationally known, but that's an accomplishment, man.
I was the first and up until and maybe still the only living performer to have a statue in every museum. At first, though, I was the first living person they ever made a statue of. Normally, they've only done that with people already dead, gone, whatever.
Amazing accomplishment.
If you'd been to any of their museums prior to 2010, 2010 when we revealed that first one, all the people in there that you're seeing are dead, like Robert Wadlow, the tall guy, right? Still people that Ripley's documented, but none of them with us anymore. Right. So, and I had been doing work for Ripley's at that point for about 10, 11 years. Wow. And so one of the people in their art department at the time, the head of it at that time at the archives, Barry, he wanted to do a figure and he wanted to do one of me. So this was the whole idea. Was I came in and I got cast and they made the figure. We revealed it at IAPA. The reveal in the booth won a bunch of awards. It was incredibly popular. They would ship this one statue all over the country and the world to do it at appearances, and I would show up sometimes to unveil it. And so at whatever point a decision was made, number one, that every Ripley's should have one of these statues. So that was the first one. So the art department had to start cranking them out. And like, to give you an idea, like just the head, like a lot of the Ripley's, you go there, they'll have like the head of the guy with the 3 golf balls or 3 pool balls in his mouth on. Those heads are works of art. They cost about $10,000 to $15,000.
Absolutely. I know some artists who do that kind of work.
The full body resin, everybody says wax, it's technically resin, right? But statue is just, over $20,000 to make one of those things.
Wow.
You know, the man hours, they've got to be painted, right? That's my only complaint about it is I'm like, I wish you would just update it and fill in all the scales. Like I'm complete now. Go ahead, just fill in.
Right. Show me now. Show me.
Yeah, it's like it's a time capsule. It's like, here's what the Lizardman looked in 2010 when we took photos of his tattoos for reference.
Right.
And that's what they've got. But
next to pictures of you fully tattooed.
Yeah, they did me as the first one. They did the experiment for the statue. They liked it, so it was the first one they said has to go everywhere. Then since then they've done a few other people, but I don't know that they've done them in all the auditoriums.
Cool. That's quite an accomplishment. That's just totally awesome.
It's a legacy. It is very much sort of a legacy thing where, because I look at it as Ripley's inspired me as a kid, and I loved Ripley's, believe it or not. And now I'm in those museums alongside many of the people who inspired me. And so, and many of those people were long, long gone. Like it's like the stuff that interests me is too old, right? Even when I was younger, I was looking at stuff, so we're back. But I'm like, if it survived long enough to reach me as a kid a century later, that means odds are decent that I survive a century long.
It's amazing. Yeah, totally. So my last question is just kind of about you as an artist. I'm imagining, because I was looking again, I was researching you a little bit, and you said something about being a creative person. I don't know what you've had to do with designing your tattoos or what your visual medium is, but I feel like your art is really the sideshow performing and that kind of stuff is really what your craft would be. Or are you an artist? Do you design your tattoos?
I would definitely say that almost all of my work and most of my work and all of the skill, if any, I possess probably lies with performance. That said, I designed my tattoo. I designed the way I look. It's stylizes it. So people often be, you could have done this more realistically, or what does Freak have to do? I'm like, look, if you got to think about it as like a tattooed lizard man, do whatever you got to do with your own mental gymnastics. It's my body, and I'm fine with it. Like this is what what I went for, and I made a lot of choices that I understand. That's the other thing. People are always so weird. They're like, well, why would you do it this way? I'm like, stop and think about this for a moment.
What does it mean to you?
I'm someone who decided to do something that almost no one would do. Why do you expect me to have the same tastes as people who wouldn't do that? Like, I am so accustomed to having the unpopular, a taste in whatever it is, clothing, music style, whatever like that it just doesn't bother me at all. If somebody is like, I don't know if I would have gone with that, I'm like, that's okay, and it's sunny out too.
Right. Totally.
I get that a lot, especially when I got my knee tattoos for the first time, and my mom freaked out, like, why would you do this?
Right.
Why? Because I'm like, I've been wanting these for 4 years, Mom. I was going to get them eventually.
It was going to happen.
Yeah.
Totally. But it's also like, it's like artwork, looking at artwork, like, why do you need the artist's explanation? Why don't you just like interpret it like you said, like use whatever you need to do in your mind to make it all right, because that's how it is. Right.
And in that regard, in terms of performance, this is something though that it's one of the things I love about performance. One of the reasons I love doing it, and one of the things I try to do is that what we are trying to do is influence your mood, influence your thought. I mean, I'm like, what the people like describe your job in a weird way or an interesting way like that. I'm like, I practice mass mood control. I attempt to gather people together and then collectively alter their moods to suit my desire.
Totally, I love it.
Which is, and just, luckily my desire is to make them have a good time. But it's
right.
not of like,
Luckily, that's your
I can do it if you let me. Right?
I love it. Luckily, luckily I desire them to have a good time. I met a musician this weekend at the Great South Bay Festival. They had a thing called Squonk, and it was performance art. It was these two giant inflatable hands, like 3 stories high hands, and they built a stage that they could run up and down. It was a musical performance group, but the hands were built so that they could articulate. So like as it's playing guitar, it's like doing this, it's like touching them, and it was like it was a great experience. And I was talking to the guy, and he's like, I have the best job in the world. I get to watch people as they forget everything for 30 minutes. They forget everything else, and they're here with me in the moment. You know what I mean? And and that's
a common, and I don't want to denigrate it. I'm not saying when I say common, I'm just saying it's a sentiment that you will hear a lot if you spend a lot of time around performers. And this, I think there's certain types of performance lend it to it more like that. But there's always that moment of somebody out there, and I've even said this to people who are critical of it like that. There's somebody who would say of watching me doing one of my old like stomach pumping routines, where like watching you do, I was just so nauseous. I felt like I was going to throw up myself. I'm like, well, people do throw up sometimes like that. And they're like, let's make you feel like, look, do you have anything in your life that's pissing you off right now? Did you walk in with any problems about it? Where was that when I was making you gag and up in your throat? I'm like, I understand that wasn't an entirely pleasant experience for you, but what I was you, and I took you away from it. Like nothing existed but me in that moment, was it? Like not just to stroke my own ego, but just to sort of point out, it's like, this is what I can do for you. I can erase the rest of the world. I can make you forget about the people around you. You're so worried about not hitting your own shoes with your vomit.
Bravo, man. Bravo. Much kudos to you for that. Well, I have been totally taking up all of the time, so I'm going to give this. I'm not going to say another word because I know
we're having fun.
Courtney is super excited to talk to you as well. So I'm going to let her ask you some questions that we usually ask our guests here on Strange and Wonderful. And I'm going to thank you again for your time. You've been awesome to talk to. And
my pleasure. I see the binder's open.
The binder is open and we are ready to go.
Okay, Erik, what is strange and wonderful about yourself?
This almost sounded like a job interview right there. You hit me hard with a formal name. So, Erik, wonderful. Well, I think, both strange and wonderful are very, very subjective terms. So what someone might find strange about me are the things that I've chosen to do to my body. But equally strange to a lot of people might be the fact that, I grew up in a log cabin built by hand by my parents, that we heated the house entirely by wood, that I would have to fell trees every summer to survive every winter. That's an experience that, growing up, I thought everybody had. And then I found out, I'm like, oh, wait, you people don't spend 2 months hoarding wood in your basement? I didn't know that wasn't a thing.
That sounds normal to me because my parents collect wood all the time.
Right, but in terms of strange, there are easy and obvious things that meet criteria. And I love to play with the artistic license of it, like because they're subjective terms like that. But I also think that there is a certain point where we have to kind of like draw a consensus reality line. Like there are always the people, and they're well-meaning people, but. And I tell them this on behalf of all sideshow performers. When you come up and you say to us, "You're not weird. You're so nice." Well, first of all, those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? So stop separating those in your head. And the other thing, if they don't say nice, they say you're so normal. You're just like, okay, maybe we're normal in the way that we all have to do laundry and go grocery shopping, and we all fall in love and have those problems. Yeah, sure, we're all like that. But my job is still something that only 12 other people on the planet do. There are only 4 other people in the world that have tattoo. Like, I love your intention. Let me say, I love your intention and your energy, but let's not be ridiculous here. I am statistically and clearly objectively abnormal, and that is almost always part of the point too.
And I think that's
it.
Yeah, totally. That's what I was saying about being a light worker. I think you expand people's minds to understand those things. Like when they see you and they talk to you and you do get that chance, bam, there you go. All they need is 5 minutes with you. I'm sure, just by talking to you, I'm sure that comes across to many people. I'm sure you've helped a lot of people open up their mind. Just
one of my personal favorite artists is Breton, and so one of his great quotes about surrealism is that it's not about art, it's about a total transformation of the mind. And so I say, like, yeah, I can't paint. Well, I mean, I can't be disciplined enough to learn to paint well enough to communicate that level of complexity in a painting. So I do it through performance.
Awesome. But with a clear understanding of what you're talking about.
Well, clear enough. I mean, look, nobody escapes the chaos. No matter how good you get at keeping your head above the water, you still get swept along in the stream.
Yeah.
It's still a human experience, right?
Yeah, people be like, yeah, that's one of those big sort of, like I said, I did comparative religions. And I was very much I was willing to try any half-ass wild idea if it might, produce premature enlightenment, if it might somehow awaken this. Like, I tried all the dumb shit so you don't have to, basically. And it's almost all the, like, there's some stuff there that's pretty good for panic attacks and maybe long-term flexibility and health, but for the most part, a lot of the claims that it's not there. But like I said, in the process of doing all of that, I did gain I'm losing this. I lost this train of thought. Sorry. That's what it was. The idea that you're gonna figure it out and then everything's gonna be smooth sailing or whatever. Like, no, like once you get, and the other thing, there's the two things go hand in hand. It's like, it's not one enlightenment. It's an infinite amount of enlightenment. First, you get enlightened about race, then class, then or whichever order you learn it in, right? You're going to constantly becoming enlightened about a new thing. It's going to be going there. And every time you do that, it doesn't fix the world. It just fixes your thinking about that problem. That problem's still in the world. Everything's still a dumpster fire. It's all fucked. Nothing. It's not going to help you calm down the next emotional crisis that comes through the door. It's not going to help you save the world. All it's going to do is let you know that you found a logical path through that wilderness if you could just get a bunch of people to follow you. But hey, welcome to the world.
Right. That's
exactly. We've been experiencing since dinosaurs got hit by the asteroid. I don't think the dinosaurs were expecting their life to end.
Right. Yeah. None of them had plans. That's what it was. Everybody had an open calendar, and it was an egalitarian society with no work. And they're like, shit, we summoned an asteroid.
Damn it, me and my dinosaur self.
Well, that's why they should have burned all the dinosaur witches. And
it was like, witches like, nope, evolution, go.
And that's what you see. The proto-human mammals at that time were all like, see, didn't burn the witches.
That's what happens.
Yeah. And then we ended up with Protestants, or I don't know what
yes. Okay, next question. This is a question from my mommy. My mommy asked me this.
Okay.
Yeah, my mommy. Okay, she asked me this. What inspired you to modify your whole body to look like a lizard?
Right. Well, there's two elements to that question, at least in my case, which, because of the way that it just happened for me, because like I said, there's a lot of planned elements, but a lot of this kind of just happened organically as part of my life and sort of development as a person, which, people say, like, when did you choose to do it? I was like, no, I got to the point where it became inevitable. I didn't choose a damn thing. But there's the inspiration to completely and totally modify my body, which was initially what I talked about a little bit before, seeing the Japanese tattooing, learning about old sideshow acts that were body-based. At the time, too, I was also in martial arts, and I was learning a bunch of basically stunts, or, what I do now is stunts that I learned as martial arts exhibitions. So these were all sorts of things that inspired me. And, the conceptual aspect of it, because at the time I was a philosophy student and a performance arts student in college. So of course there's got to be some highbrow, high concept, oh, you're 18 and you think you're deep reason behind it. There was some linguistic philosophy that I was applying to the idea of what it meant to be human. So like one of the earliest ideas of it as a conceptual art piece wasn't Lizardman. It was basically and this is a piece that already existed in art and theater. I was just sort of, wanting to build on it with my twist. It's the alien, where the artist comes out as a character that's an alien and, pretends either not to understand social norms or, practices or language or whatever else. And, then whatever happens. And that's been written as plays. It's been done as performance art, things like that. So I was in that vein. I'm not, I wasn't like out of nowhere completely whole on my own. I have influences and a lineage that can be traced back from the early tattooed men, early people like the great Omi who chose to become tattooed and be in sideshows, all the way up to 70s performance artists like Chris Burden, Vito Acconci, Carolee Schneemann. Dadaist performance artist Joseph Beuys was a big influence on me in my student years as an undergrad. But so yeah, there's the inspiration to modify my body, and then I had to for the reptilian aspect to it, it's like, like I say, you have the idea. Well, what's it going to be? Right. And as I mentioned before, I played around with a lot of different themes and ideas, and there were some things that I really wanted to do, and then others that were just kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. How am I going to fit it together? So really, what started it all was kind of like Omi has, if people aren't familiar with him, he's sometimes called the Zebra Man, which is not a name that he performed under, but ended up in his press because he had stripes and it was non-representational black designs over his whole body, and a huge influence on me. And it's easy to see if you see a picture of him, and you can go find it. He also had stretched earlobes, big stretched septum like I do, filed teeth, full body tattooing, obviously. The decision to go reptilian was, there you go. There's pictures of Omi. Yep. Yeah. And so,
I hate to say this, but that does not look like a zebra at all.
Yeah, but it was a press thing, and it stuck. Yeah. It was on flyers and posters, and at the time, that was the internet.
Amazing though, but I was like,
on every wall.
Where'd you get a zebra from?
Cool.
But so those are my inspirations to transform my body. Eventually, as I started figuring out things I wanted to do, like filing my teeth, and tongue splitting was. And it's funny, I'm coming up on the 25th anniversary of splitting my tongue. And so back then it was all but a rumor, so I was kind of going in blind with this plan with an oral surgeon and all this. But the fact that I was going to be able to do it, really, that was kind of cemented that I was going to go with this reptilian theme that I had been playing with and wanted to have there before. Because I had, like I said earlier, I didn't want to be the guy with dragons and tigers on me a lot. I meant I didn't want to have traditionally Japanese dragons. Right. I had actually considered dragons and reptiles and stuff, but more Western, based, something a little more closely aligned with my own heritage and such. But anyway, I ended up here, which is largely from Godzilla movies as a kid and that sort of thing. It's people, like I say, people will make questions about elements of it, and I'm like, look, it's meant to be stylized, and it's really.
It's conceptual, it's like
some kids draw on walls, some kids draw on themselves. Well, I'm drawing on myself, and what you're getting is not meant to be a hyper-realistic portrayal of a human-reptilian hybrid. It's meant to be Lizardman, which is me. I made it up. That's me. I get it's whatever the hell I say it is.
Okay. What do your friends and family think of your lifestyle?
Why do I care what they think?
I mean, honestly, me too.
I understand that it's a stock interview question, and it's a stock interview question for a reason, because people wonder about it. But I mean, the answer is just so painfully obvious that I feel like an idiot saying, like, they love it. They're my friends. They're my family. They love me.
That's how my family is, and my friends. They love my doll joint tattoos, and they love Dahlia.
But I mean, I've got news for you. Like, if you have friends that you're always fighting with, you're not friends.
Exactly.
Yeah, some people, I think it's understandable to assume that some people are estranged from their family.
I get that, and that, I mean, it's sad. I try to dance around it a lot too, because it has been ever since the TV stuff, ever since basically Ripley's. I've been kind of out there as someone that people see and, sometimes get inspired by, which is fantastic. I'm flattered as hell. That's wonderful. I'm happy to be a positive element in anyone's life in that matter. But I also become a person who gets a lot of emails from, frankly, almost entirely kids, teenagers, arguing with their families about a tattoo or a piercing or something there. And yeah, it's the roughest thing in the world too, because I sit there too as someone who's old but can remember being a kid. But I didn't go through that with my family because I was an adult when I started doing stuff, and plus I had the luxury of parents who would listen to me, and if I could explain myself, would be like, oh, okay, we get it now, And I know that is just so incredibly rare in this world that it's a tragedy.
Totally.
Yeah. Some people have horrible things, and it's such a stupid, when it's body modification too, it's like, it's such a stupid thing. And you just sort of hold out hope that like, well, maybe time will fix this. Eventually you will realize that, unless that was like some horrible racist tattoo you got or something like that.
Right.
I mean, if you come home with like SS lightning bolts and your dad kicks your ass, I hate to break it to you, I'm on your dad's side.
I'm with your dad on that one. Sorry.
Totally. That's great. I love it.
So this is another question from my mom. My mom wanted to ask you a lot of questions. She's like,
wow.
oh.
Right. Moms do have a lot of questions.
I love my mom though. Okay.
Yeah.
If you had children, would you support them of having body modifications like you have, or what if your kids see you and would they accept you if you have any kids?
Right. Well, first of all, I have a vasectomy, which has brought me much more joy than I imagine a child ever would have.
I love that.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would want, at least for, I can't say what I would want for my kids because I don't have kids, right? And exactly. I feel like, it's very weird. There are certain subjects, right, that we can't discuss. Not that you can't discuss, but that it's a little bit weird. Like, why would my opinion matter? Like, right, so as a person who doesn't have a child, he's not raising a child. Like, I have a vested interest in you guys being good parents because I don't want to be around your kids and have them be shitty.
Right.
But I don't have any meaningful input to give you other than please don't raise shitty kids.
Right.
Exactly.
But just it sounds like as a person and who you are, you would obviously be supportive,
Right. I would want for if I had kids, I would imagine that I would want for them at least as much as I want for any child in the world. Mm-hmm. And that would be, if doing something, don't do exactly what you should never copy anyone exactly. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do, in concept or in theory, I tell people all the time, do not do what I do, but do the type of things that I do. Take the actions I take in the way that I take them. When I talk about how I planned out my transformation, I talk about things like when I realized, business, I'm like, okay, this is going to be my life. I have to treat this like a business. I made decisions, because people will ask like, oh, how do you get into it? And I'm like, and stuff, a lot has changed. A lot of the stuff that made perfect sense for me, that was really smart for me to do, would be a horrible idea now because the world, look, I came around, there was still broadcast TV, right? You still had to wait a week to see them. Like, just so many things have changed, and touring and all this, but some stuff still applies and some doesn't. It's, so you could take the idea, like if a kid is saying, I want to do something that is an expression of myself and I think can be entertaining for other people and profitable enough for me to sustain myself as making a living as an artist, I'm like, that is a great goal, dream, aspiration, whatever. Now let's get down to the nitty gritty. How are you going to do it?
Right.
What is?
You'd be like, I made you. Where's my cut?
Yeah. I mean, look, hey, like, here's an old article I wrote years ago about how to be a freak. Just go through that. Some of it's common sense.
That's great.
I don't need the competition. I ain't out of this game yet.
Awesome, man. Okay. This is so much fun. I'm having so much fun talking to you.
Me too. I'm having a great time. Okay, next question. Are you in a relationship? And if so, what do your partners think of your lifestyle?
Well, I am married. I've
Oh.
been married for coming up on 19 years.
Oh.
And we've been together for, I got to do math. So coming up on 19, that means we're coming up on 23 years together.
Oh,
Awesome.
wow.
Because we met when she came out to see me perform. So, people always like, what does your wife think about what you're doing? Like, she's never known me. She doesn't know before Lizardman. That's, but she knows very, very early on. I tell people like, well, the first time she saw me, I came running out on stage in a Speedo and jabbed 2 giant hat pins through my cheeks. Yeah,
she was all right with that.
Rolled all over myself, amongst other acts and things I did. So yeah, I think that she's pretty much okay with what I do and what I am. But it's also like too. It's like people always too, like, oh my god, what does your wife think? I mean, oh, she's horrified. She hates it. Like, why? How would that work?
She hates tattoos,
but she won't get a divorce.
No, she's like, no. I must
She's
stay.
like, you know what? I hate what you've done so much. I'm staying with you out of spite. I don't. Maybe you know what? Now I'm getting suspicious.
Like, honey, what are you planning?
Yeah, I'm like, wait, is she working a long con on me? What the? Gonna get to the deathbed. It'll be like till death do you part. She's like, oh, by the way, I always hated you.
Right.
Well, she couldn't get any lizard babies, so.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, like, one of the things that that she and I bonded on very early, and it's one of those things that is that I often say to people about what I've done in my body. Oh, look, I spent more time, more years figuring out what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it before I started than almost anyone can document putting into meeting the person they're going to have and raise a child with. You know, I mean, people have been like, hey, how long were you together before you got married? 2 years. When did you have your first kid? We got pregnant the first year. 3 years. Okay, so I spent a year longer deciding to tattoo my face before you guys brought another human being into the world, and you're questioning my judgment?
Exactly.
and we have a comment. Sounds like she's talking from experience. She's saying divorce is a lot of paperwork. That's from Matt.
Yeah, but I mean, this is my first and only marriage. From what I understand, divorce is always worth the paperwork. Yeah. all of my friends who've had divorces say that, no divorce is too soon and no divorce is too expensive.
but I'm imagining you're very, very happy.
Oh, we are. Yeah, it's totally happy. Well, like I said, she'll have to kill me. I'm not going anywhere. I got a good deal. She married a sideshow freak, and she's traveled around the world with her. But she decided to switch careers. Well, about a decade ago now. We just had her 10-year anniversary of being a nurse.
Oh,
wow!
And she was a nurse, specialized in neurology. She's a stroke coordinator for a hospital. And,
any body modification or tattoos on her?
Oh yeah, she has what I've often told people early on, that my wife has cooler tattoos than I do, because all of her tattoos are based on urban legends. They make it look like she has scars tattooed on her back to make it look like somebody stole her kidneys.
Oh, wow.
And she has like the blue star acid temporary tattoo rumor. She has blue stars tattooed around her ankle, like those temporary tattoos that supposedly had acid in them. And she has kudzu vines that are strangling her. And she had a black widow like in her hair biting her, but didn't really like it. So she's in the process of having that removed and might have it redone better. That one just didn't turn out quite that well. And she got a few other tattoos about, and she's got some piercings, but it's one of those situations where when she's dressed, she's wearing scrubs at work. You're not seeing or noticing anything out of the usual.
Well, I'm imagining people are probably very surprised when you show up at the Christmas party, if you guys even go.
It's very early on when we first moved in together, she worked for a bank. And so, they'd have the annual Christmas party. We go down there, take the pictures, I'd throw on a suit, go down. And she had coworkers who obviously knew who I was. It wasn't a big secret or anything like that. But this is a big bank. It's a big company party. They're renting out a hotel ballroom and souvenir photos and all this. So there's a lot of people like looking around and they're like, "What is that? And why is it here at our party?"
Why is it here? And
this is very funny. So this goes back. One of the back when podcasts were very, very before everybody had a podcast. So there was a guy that worked at the bank too, and it turns out that he was a stand-up comedian, and I do stand-up in Austin as well. But he was a little bit before me, and we never actually crossed paths in stand-up. But he saw me because he worked at the same bank at the Christmas party, just hanging out with my wife and some of her coworkers, like that. And I was just like, oh, and of course, I would do the same thing if I was in a stand-up, see something weird, like I got to start talking about this. Well, he moved to New York very shortly, I think like in the new year after, because that was the Christmas party. And then somebody eventually found me like, hey, did you ever hear so-and-so on this podcast? Like, what? And he's on there, and he's like, I could not believe this guy would just come here, and like we're all supposed to act normal, like he's not fucking green walking around the office. So apparently, like he was just, and I'm sure he was playing it up because he's gonna be like, I get it, man. We live on the same side of the curve, like really like threw down a rant about like how can I just be there like, oh, this is normal, just hey, I'll have a cup of punch, and but I was like, well, if I showed up there and started acting like, hey, motherfuckers, the freak show's here, and jam stuff down my throat, you'd be like, why are you doing this at the Christmas party? So I'm like, what kind of catch-22 no-win situation is he throwing me into, right?
Wow, that's hysterical.
Just because you say that, they're like, oh, well, what are the coworkers? They're like, well, the ones who know, because she always had a photo of me on the desk or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, there have been some fun introductions, and there's also been the other coworkers like, oh, has so and so met you? Like some of the hospital higher up admins and people like that. Like, have they met Erik? Do they know about it? Like that. Every now and then too, she'll have somebody like walk through and like see the one of the pictures of me, and then she'll be like, oh my God, is that the Lizardman from Ripley's? And they'll be like, oh, I saw a statue at Ripley's, or I think she had somebody once that was like a travel nurse that was just part-time coming through. It was like, oh, I met him once or whatever like that. She talked about the whole thing, like let him tell the whole story. She's like, yeah, I married him.
That's
and they'll be like, what? One of the best. Everybody else has better stories than me about me. Like my friend Joel, who travels with me, because they get the other people like standing. There's people will walk over to them not knowing that they're with me and start talking to them about me, so they get all the
right. Look at that freak. Oh, you mean my best friend? You mean,
oh, shit.
Yeah. So like, what Megan dances? What she is part of the Satan's Cheerleaders, which is a well-known go-go troupe around Austin. It goes back to the '90s. Wow. Dancing with a band called the Flame Trick Subs. She's also part of Black Widow Burlesque in town. And she was doing a show with them, and there's a guy there that worked for the venue. Great guy, but I'm going to call him a kid. He's 21. He's working at a bar. But I'm 50. I get to call him a kid. So this kid is really excited about the show. He's a burlesque. I remember being, my first time working in a bar too. Yeah, it's good for him. He's living life. He's loving it like that. And he's always like, and apparently like he's talking to my wife where I'm out in the crowd, like with our friends, wherever. So he's like, you see, the Lizardman's here, like that, and she's just, I think she's decided that anytime somebody does that, she's just going to let them run as far as they can with it before she he's like, yeah, and she's like, oh yeah, he is. And the guy's like, yeah, did you know he's from Austin? And she goes, yeah, actually, he's my. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. So it's her story. That's I screwed up. I got to get through it. Basically, the thing is like, he says to her, he's like, oh yeah, the Lizardman's here like that. And at some point, she says to him, she goes, yeah, that's my husband. That's my husband. We're married. Oh yeah, that's what she told him. Right. In this case, she told him right off. She goes, yeah, that's my husband. I'm married to him. Whatever. And the guy goes, oh my God, did you know he lives in Austin? And again, and just to prove also that my wife will always be funnier than I am, because this is the sort of thing I would think of 3 days later, but she's right there in the spot. She goes, yeah, in my house.
That's hysterical. Oh, that's a great
story. It's just true.
No, that's a great story.
So do you ever get like weird people that's like, hey, I think you're sexy?
Unfortunately, I think everybody gets that, but yeah, it's I don't want to jinx myself, right? You imagine if I don't want to say that it's awful, but because it hasn't been yet. But please, that's not a challenge. I'm not throwing down the gauntlet here for anybody to try and be the new worst story, because there are bad ones. But I think it's sort of like, you don't put the shooter's name out there. You don't celebrate some bad behavior. Like I could tell you stories about horribly awkward people putting me in even more awkward situations, but that would only serve to reinforce the idea that if you do this sort of thing, you'll get talked about.
You don't want to encourage that kind of behavior.
Some of them, that's the problem for someone like me is that I make a concerted effort to take things at face value, because I am very naturally paranoid and suspicious, and I fear I'm paranoid and suspicious of myself being unnecessarily, overly paranoid to someone who has good intentions and treating them wrong. But it's very, very hard sometimes, especially online, to tell the difference between someone who's genuinely confused and interested, and someone who is trying to set up a situation. And I don't mind being the butt of a joke, but again, there's a stupidity line where I'm just like, look, your behavior is not beneficial for you, me, anyone else. Stop acting like it. I don't even sound like my dad at this point, because my dad was kind of like, no, go have some. Probably people like, man, you're a buzzkill. But I'm like, my position is, I'm like, some of you are just being jerks, and you're the reason we can't have nice things. So straighten the fuck up.
Yeah, treat people like a human being, even if they do like a lizard. Okay, if you have a lizard kink, people, keep it to yourself.
Awesome.
Well, so, I do a joke like in stand-up wise too, where people, because everybody, when it's sexual like that, the big thing is everybody, is your penis tattooed? Is your or is your cock tattooed? However they come at it, right? There's a million different ways, but it's funny because I can almost always tell when somebody's going to ask about my genitals, but I can't always tell which way they're going to ask, because there are definitely styles. The people that try to tiptoe around it, the people that will scream it out at a little league gang, like, hey man, is your cock tattooed? Like, dude, sit down. My nephew is at bat. That shit happens. I just talk about like bad behavior. Yeah, don't want to reinforce. Please do not shout at me across public spaces.
That's right.
Asking questions about my genitals. You won't be the first. You won't be clever, and it won't be funny.
That was a nice way to ask. That's
awesome. So, but I say though, like for stand-up, like I say, like, oh, if you're wondering, I'm like, it's a perfectly normal and reasonable thing to wonder, but it's not a reason to forego all social norms. Like, I'm not the big defender of conservatism and tradition and proper etiquette and politeness. All that. But there is a certain basic level that we're gonna have to work on here, people. And there's like you don't have to come over it and whisper it in my ear like some sort of weird come on either. But like, we can have an adult conversation about an adult topic in an adult way. How about that?
All right. So since we are all adults here and we're friends and we're not coming up to you in any creepy way, what's the answer to the question?
It's not tattooed.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
See, now, if
that's a very sensitive muscle right there.
Yeah,
very sensitive.
People get them tattooed and
right. Well, and here's the thing, like, and there's a while I used to I would dance around. I had this whole thing about well, if I did all that, and what I finally come down to, and one of the reasons too that is you guys kind of proved a point that I used to make about people asking me about my idea. I'm like, you're setting me up to be a disappointment. And no man wants his dick to be a disappointment, right? Wow. When I say no, you all go, "Oh, it's not tattooed. Why isn't it tattooed?" Blah, blah, blah. And then you start going, "Well, it really hurts." Well, exactly. Like I'm not showing my dick, right? I tattooed my face because it's there.
Right. Well, you know what? I apologize because I did react that way.
No, never apologize for an honest reaction. It's just that I have the experience and have thought about this enough, and there's no reason for you to be thinking about my dick before this. So good on you for not doing that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I tell people now, and about people will be like, "Is your dick tattooed?" I think, please stop thinking about my dick. I'm a 50-year-old married man, happily married man. You're not doing me or you a favor thinking about my dick. Because here's what happens. You think about my dick, and I know you think about my dick, so now I go, hey, people are thinking about my dick, because I am still a man. There is still testosterone is present here, all right? I'm still functioning. Yeah, I had a vasectomy, but it still wants to go to the ring. Right? So when I start getting people interested in my dick, like, that's the amazing thing, right? If I had known when I was 14 years old that the trick to getting people interested in your dick was to tattoo your face, I would have done it so much sooner. Because, yeah, you tattoo your face and all of a sudden everybody's talking about your dick. And it's like, hey, face.
That's so funny.
Like,
I was going to say.
Drapes, pretty much. Or something
Right.
like that.
I wasn't even thinking about that question until you mentioned it. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting question. And then when you told us the answer and I acted disappointed, it was because I was going to say, if I had tried to imagine what you look like naked, which I hadn't, but if I did try, I would imagine that you were fully tattooed.
Now here's the thing. This is another thing, like, and I apologize for like kind of throwing unpolished, half-written bits at you guys, but it's something that I've been working on throughout my career, because it's since like I say, literally the second you get a tattoo on your face, people are going to go, like I said, does the carpet match the drapes? And I've used that joke on stage about it before too, because it really is. People they start making assumptions about what you've done. They think they know something about you,
right?
But
that leads to something else, right? But I'm like, here's the great thing. Now that I'm finished, right? And so basically the only not tattooed skin on me is like palms of my hands, soles of my feet, cock and balls, right? That's a tattoo. So I always joke about how, people are like, aren't kids scary? You're like, no, I'm like a giant cartoon character. Look, I'm green, I'm fun, I'm wacky, I do weird stuff, I make boogers like that. Like, okay, so here's what I look like naked now. And I think it's amazingly fantastic and I see it all the time, right? But because it's funny to me. And I'm like, look, if anybody's going to laugh at me naked, it's going to be me, right? So what you have to do if you want to picture me naked is picture a cartoon character, right? It's all green and shiny, whatever like that. And then if somebody is drawn on your favorite Lizardman cartoon character, a hyper-realistic pair of balls and I won't brag and say big, white, throbbing, veiny cock or anything like that, but a respectable set of genitals on there. Right. So, I look like you're playing pin the tail on the donkey, except for it was like pin the cock and balls on the lizard man. And instead of normally if people get a tattoo, yes, I've seen plenty of genital tattoos and I've considered it many times, just never quite found the right design because I didn't want to just do scales. That seemed weird and boring. I wanted something different. But if you look at someone who's got a tattoo, you'd be like, wow, that really makes it seem like disembodied, almost like it'd be like a detachable penis.
Right.
I've done that with basically like a negative space effect. So the rest of my body is cartoon, but now there's this human dick on it. And I'm like, it's funny and terrifying at the same time. And I'm like, but look, my wife likes it, so I don't.
That's all that matters, right?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm happy. She's happy. You don't have to see it, so imagine it if you want. I gave you the perfect setup.
I think most people are just imagining. I think most people are just imagining your penis through like a bad dragon dildo, like dildos and stuff like that. They probably imagine that, and I'm thinking like,
there's actually a picture of a dragon tattooed fully over someone's genitals that goes around. People are like, literally people have taken their phones, walked up to me and been like, is that your penis? No, that is not my penis. No. I had a number of genital piercings over the year. Like currently I don't wear jewelry in any of them, but I tried a number of them. I had an upper the vertical glans piercing. It got up to forget if it was a 4 or a 6 that was the 5 stage, but fairly large gauge. And they were fun experiments and play things for a while. But like I said, my wife and I have had each other and enough time to figure out what we like and how we like it. So
that's great. That's wonderful. And I would say that's a testament to your whole existence. Knowing what you want and even if it's exploration and finding it.
Well, that's what I was trying to mention before. Like because of my dad's military career and both my parents being educators and growing up in this small town in the time period that I did, I was so lucky to like say, you have to have the breadth of experience to figure out who the hell you are. And so many people just not only don't get that, they close themselves off from it because we reinforce it. Like a lot of the things that, doing the right thing, socially, or following a lot of predetermined paths, especially at the point we've gotten to now. And it's one of those things where I do feel this is my sort of old man screaming at the cloud moment, where it's like, back in my day, I'm like, dude, I hate to say it, but I'm like, yeah, back in my day, I can remember when some of these institutions worked and they weren't a bad idea. But in today's world and the place that we have ended up, and it doesn't matter, really doesn't matter what direction you were driving once you've gone over the edge of the cliff, right? And so it's we're sort of at that, but
totally. Courtney, we have been at this for a long time, longer than we usually go.
I know, but this is wonderful.
This is amazing. I'm not trying to rush out of
it. This is why podcasts are way too long, right?
Yeah. Well, because the conversation is interesting, and again, I just want to, again, thank you for your time, because you're so amazing to talk to. Everything that I wanted you to be, as far as like enlightened and friendly and all of that stuff. I know there's a couple of questions that I love when Courtney asks. How many more questions you got for us?
I got like 1, 2, 4 questions.
All right, I'll try and be fast. Do like a speed round.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. What do you do as a career and job?
What do I do as a career and job? I am a professional entertainer, which means I try and get people to pay me to do anything I can think of that I feel like doing at the moment. Yeah, mostly it's live performance. A lot of in the last few years before COVID, I was really transitioning to a lot more street performance.
Okay.
Street performing doesn't work that well during a pandemic. It's not the great idea. It's starting to come back, as are some of the festivals. Like the Adelaide Fringe was a big festival for me for 10 years. Right? It was the last event that I was able to do. I flew home from it March 17th, 2020, right into quarantine. So it's, what I do for a living now is remains to be seen as we work our way out of this pandemic. I've been doing stuff online. I just did a complete re-edit of a book of articles that I've had for years now, but I went back and sort of critiqued my former self in those articles. That's up on Kindle now and not hard to find. It's the only book by Lizardman. I
was actually going to bring that up.
Going forward, I foresee, there's going to be a return to live performance. I'm working on doing more writing, and we'll see what else is out there.
Awesome.
Next question.
Okay. How did you ended up on Ripley's Believe It or Not?
I ended up on Ripley's Believe It or Not because I was and am a nerd. So what you don't realize today is that, now websites are outdated. You should have an app, right, if you're a business owner. But back in the 90s, significantly less people were online, and businesses too. Like, one of the things I joke is I had a website before Red Lobster did. So, wow. And this is an year or two. I'm talking about the days before Google, before any of that. So AOL search was about as good a search engine as you had. But as the internet started to pick up in the late 90s and be adopted by a lot of different industries, producers, talent agents, casting people, they started to discover the internet and started to discover that there were people that had been putting up websites about their weird hobbies and things, like me. In fact, at the time that Ripley's found me and they found me online, there was basically the Coney Island Sideshow website that was a passion project for Ferdini, the sword swallower, Fred Calder, and there were my websites. If you put Sideshow in, that's what you got. Wow. you got them and me. So by being very early to the game online, I scored a lot of work, because as soon as people started figuring out, like say in the industry, that you could go look there rather than calling up like, hey, Bob, you know anybody that swallows swords? Oh, well, I think George used to know somebody. Let me give you that. And it'd play a game of telephone for weeks, and it might get you, it might not. Now it'd be like, oh, I get an email. Hey, I saw you swallow swords. We would like a sword swallower to shoot some video footage, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so, some of my earliest work was doing video footage. Like I bought a little mini DV camera, and I would set it up I lived in what was technically a condemned apartment above a bar that I worked in, but I could film in the backyard and in the apartment above. I could film footage that I could then send in, and I got paid for. So, and it ended up being used as like stock footage. There's footage of my arm before it was tattooed, doing a skewer through it, things like that, jumping on broken glass.
Right.
It got used in some indie and B-grade films. I think the biggest thing was Universal Soldier 2, maybe. I think there's a hacker that gets control of the Universal Soldiers. Is the sequel to a Van Damme movie, but I don't think he was in the second one. Maybe he was. I don't know. But anyway, they use weird footage of weird things like fetish play and body modification on TV screens in the background of his lair. And I made and sold a bunch of video to them that ended up being not making the final cut, but I still got paid.
Cool. Well, that's good. You got paid though.
Yeah, I got paid, so I didn't care.
Okay.
Even if it had my face in it anyway, so I wouldn't have been able to be like, "Hey, look, that's me in the movie." It would be like, "Hey, that's my arm. Hey, that's my foot."
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Court.
Okay. How do you deal with people that despise you for your body modification, wanting you to be like them, like the not so-called freak to them?
I'm not sure I entirely understand that question. So how do I deal with people that say I'm not a freak to them?
Like, how do you deal with people that think that you're a freak and they want you to be normal like them?
Oh, okay. That's it. Yeah, there's a bit of, it was still a complete sentence with the missing words, but it wasn't it was harder to make sense of. All right. Look, I mean, simple answer, I don't deal with them.
Exactly.
I realize it's a little bit weird now. I'm catching myself coming back to it a lot, but I'm like, I'm 50 years old. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've gotten rid of the people like, look, I know that a lot of like, self-help or spirit. I want to lump a lot of like news because like I said, I went through this. And I mean, there's something that I don't think it's particularly mystical. I think it's just common sense that you should be progressively weeding out the bad people and bringing in more good people as you go. And I'm like, there are no real milestones, right? There's no look. If you're not doing whatever by 18, it really doesn't matter. Right? So like, I'm not going to say by 50 you should be, but I'm like, look, by this point in my life, if I hadn't gotten rid of almost, if not all, the bad people and really drawn in good people, well, I guess I'd be miserable. I don't know, but I definitely feel like I would have failed at a basic winning strategy for life. It's not about winning. I hate to think a better term, stuff like that. Like, if we're talking about what are things I can do that will positively impact my life, no matter who I am, no matter what my situation is. Well, number one, identify people that are helping you and identify people that are hurting you. Get more of the first, get rid of the second.
Absolutely.
And I know it's not easy, but it's like looking at a fighter in a fight, right? That's the whole problem with the sort of outer perspective, right? Like, it's very easy for me to see and analyze your problems, but I can never seem to do it for my own.
Right,
that is the human condition. That's everybody's condition, right? And it's like when you've got the perfect advice for someone and you give it to them and their life doesn't change, you're like, what's wrong with you? You didn't follow my perfect advice. No, that's yelling at a fighter who's on the bottom and going, you got to get up. You got to get up. It's like, I know I got to get up. I'm getting my ass. But the stuff isn't working.
What do you think I'm trying to do? I'm trying to get up.
Like, sometimes life is holding motherfuckers down.
Exactly.
So,
and that's what I love about you. You just embrace yourself and everything. And that's why I've seen people with all these old tattoos and stuff, and it made me like, what's stopping me from getting my knee joints? I'm gonna go get them.
Right.
Okay.
Well, there's this weird overestimation. Like, it's one of the things, like, I realize I do it. I oscillate back and forth between take this seriously, it's think long term, look at life as a marathon, with just do it. It doesn't freaking matter. It's all right. But the thing is, like, but it's for some things it's one, and for some things it's the other. It really is. And it's like, you talk about, like, there's so many people that I've met too that are older. And I've been lucky enough to meet some of like the older generation of tattoo people that I saw, in magazines at first and stuff like that. And people who really like moved to like Spiderweb, who, like I said, just recently died. I got to meet him. So him as an artist, but also like some of the canvases and the people, and talk with them and their experiences, being completely tattooed in the 70s or the 80s, a much different world and much different, social sort of those aspects of it.
Okay.
We're rambling off.
I saw a really,
one question
it's good. I love it. Hold on. I saw a great. Can you hear us? Oh, I got you. I think she's learning.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I saw a nice sentiment that you were talking about Spiderweb, and where he said something to you about who you are and what that meant to him in general.
The fact that we got to talking because I was a big fan of not just his tattoo work, but his work as an artist in general, the Electric Crutch Orchestra and the performance art stuff that he did, which he often included tattooing in his performance, especially like and as part of protests, things like that. And we got to talking about some of the, because a lot of my early primary influences in performance art were 70s people, like I mentioned before, Vito Acconci and Chris Burden. And so talking with Spider, because he had an MFA, he was a Master of Fine Arts. He was somebody who was being groomed to be a New York painter, to be like right in the art scene, to be one of these guys who people would be collecting. Japanese billionaires would have 7 of his paintings in their vault right now. Sort of, he was meant to be one of those people, but he sort of turned his back on it for tattooing. It's the sort of romanticized version of it. But anyway, what you're talking about, the quote is like, and at one time I was talking about, ideas with him. And like I mentioned before, the quote with surrealism from Breton about transformation of the mind and everything. And that's when we got sort of talking into the concepts, the ideas he had behind his more conceptual tattooing work, like the X1000 project that I became part of in Japan, like that. And he said, he's like, back then we didn't know, we were trying to change society. I wanted tattooing to be viewed as art. I wanted it to, he's like, the conversation, he wanted the conversation to move from being, is tattooing art, to whether or not a particular tattoo was good or bad art, right? That's what you wanted to get. You want to get in the conversation at the point where it's already accepted that you're art. Nobody's arguing about whether you're art anymore like that. And this meeting that we're talking about happened in the early 2000s at what was, inarguably a great peak for me. Ripley's was still fresh. I was doing a bunch of other TV shows. I was appearing at Universal Studios, had my own show there every Halloween, was with Jägermeister touring around, hosting with bands that, we think we did Slipknot and Slayer like that year or the year after. So I had a TV, I had National, I think it was National Geographic, one of the TV shows at the time, following me around at this convention. And he's like, look at all these. He's like, look, like somebody who looks like me, who would have been like, might have even been hard for me to get carnival work in the 70s, right? Because things were falling apart and they were moving away from anything that was going to be too shocking or push people too hard. Right. But for me being mainstream at that point, that was actually a point where, it never came to fruition. The Animal Planet was talking to me. We had real discussions about me hosting a show because a clip of me had done so well as part of a clip show that they had before. I ended up having a bunch of meetings, and it's just one of those things that didn't go there. But I'm like, the idea that somebody like me, somebody who's done what I've done to myself, could be a mainstream, bright time, like, Animal Planet, family, all ages show host was just, even at the time, it was still inconceivable for a lot of people. But for Spider was able to look at me and to see that, and just to look at the difference in the way society viewed tattoos and tattooing, and was willing to accept the tattooed artist. He told me, he goes, look at you, we won.
I love that. I love that quote, and really, you are the embodiment of that. And I don't think, there's probably a few people who are kind of doing similar thing to what you're doing as far as tattooing their whole self or modifying, but I feel like, I don't know if a lot of business opportunities like that come to you, but I think I'm talking out of the intuitive side of myself, I think you can definitely expect that there's a lot of business opportunities that are going to you've earned it, you know.
Yeah, the thing, what it always comes down to is that there's, and it's a very age-old story in sideshow. It's not just me that has any sideshow performer, even people that can sort of pass normally who haven't done like heavy modification. We'll talk about there's always the cold feet, the cold feet person, right? So you'll have one. So like I've won you over, right? Well, theoretically you're a booker, right? And I've got you, right? But the thing is, you've got a partner, and they've got a wife, and that wife goes to church every Sunday. And they've heard about these sideshow people, these carny people. I'm not kidding. Like I have heard some shit that comes straight out of like a fucking Mayberry episode where I'm like, nobody thinks that way anymore. How? But it does. It happens. Like that's based on a true story. I lost a gig because somebody had a partner whose wife thought that sideshow and carny might be a little too. But I think like. When I pat myself on the back, or people are always like, what can I already do? As you say, other people doing similar things. Almost everybody else works in a shock. And I'm not saying I don't work shock. I do work shock when people want it. If you want me to, yeah, it's easy. I'd be saying, but I've always focused more away from that. I've spent the majority of my career away from that, trying to be, not broader, but just to be able to reach a bigger audience than shocks. Where I'm like, I don't want to work just at Halloween. In fact, I hate working at Halloween now because it's a Halloween event. I've kind of got burned out on them, frankly, and left them for a while. Now it's okay if it's a good event, whatever. But like, I like the fact that I can go to like art festivals and stuff and show people again, like in the golden age, like if I look at the time period history that inspires me, the aspect, I was like, look, the sideshow wasn't something that came around only in October and Halloween. No, it came around with every carnival, every fair, every circus had this setup, had these auxiliary shows on the side, right? Yep. that you would go to. And if you think about it, like when you go to the circus, or like, it's a little bit later, so you were going during the day. This is what people have forgotten, and what is such a weird, dramatic cultural shift is the stuff that I do. Like I literally just had a gig at a nightclub here in Austin, where a couple of people were so overtaken and grossed out by the giant corkscrew that I thread through my face that they walked out. I'm like, look, I mean, and I warn people, I don't take any offense at it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Hey, no big deal. Right. I've walked out of shows when they weren't for me. I usually will sell them out, but I mean, I'm not going to, it's not about whether or not somebody walks out, but it's about the fact that we've moved culturally from people being like, that they were vocal about how it was disgusting and whatever. And like, that's not just you not liking it. That's you sort of saying nobody should like this, right? You're sort of condemning, right. like this was family afternoon entertainment for generations. Now, I know some people want to be clever and be like I could be like, your grandma and grandpa went and watched this when they were 7 years old at 1 PM for a nickel. You'd be like, yeah, well, they were screwed up people. I'm like, well, that's the problem too. I don't know, but that's not what did it. Yeah, I'm sorry if your grandparents were assholes, but
right.
I mean, like just statistically by time period, probably racist. I don't know,
Right. So I just randomly.
Yeah, that's one of those things that to me, that's what when somebody else like, what's a mind blowing fact about sideshow or something that people wouldn't expect about sideshow? I'm like, well, it's the fact that our culture has moved from me doing what I do for children in the afternoon to being considered adults only after dark entertainment for 1 month a year.
Right.
Yeah. But that's in America. In Australia, when I go do the Adelaide Fringe Festival, it's still families come down all that. Like, and it's like kids are like, I think kids would be scared of you. Again, I'm a giant cartoon character. Kids love me because I'm not trying to scare them. Right. They only get scared if you act scared next to me. And they're like, but what about the stuff you do? It's gross and disgusting. Have you ever met a kid? Again, I don't have kids.
Stuff, yeah.
But
kids love blood.
I often, it's got to be people without kids that say that, right? Mm-hmm. Except for they're literally their parents. They're standing in front of me with their children and going like, well, I don't know if it's appropriate for children. I'm like, lady, have you met your kids? The grosser and more disgusting it is, the more they're going to love it. Like, I can't say booger enough.
Well, that brings me to my question, which I think will actually segue into Courtney's question. And that is, I know you said you intentionally had a vasectomy. You were not interested in having kids, and you're cool with that decision. I'm cool with that decision, right? But as the Lizardman now, and getting a reaction from kids. Do you like kids? Do you like performing for kids?
Oh, I have, like, long before I was the Lizardman, I was a swim instructor who specialized in 3 to 5 year olds. I was the guy you wanted your kid to come with, because I was the one that kid won't get in the water. Send him to Erik. I'll play games with him, and I'll get that little kid in the water. I will get them swimming. When I was a karate instructor, I was as the kids instructor. There has been for a long time in my life, people have been like, "Oh, Erik doesn't like kids," or never Lizardman doesn't like kids, because Lizardman is in the public, and if he's around kids, he always loves them. Right, and my friends, like, I really like one of my friends actually saying like, "I didn't think you liked kids." I'm like, "No, I love kids. Most kids are great. Parents are intolerable." Going back when I was teaching little kids to swim, the biggest pain in my ass was not the little kid who wouldn't get in the water, the parent of the little kid who wouldn't get in the water, or the parent of the little kid that would get in the water, because I wouldn't spend enough time with a karate instructor. Why isn't my kid Jean-Claude Van Damme? When I was teaching, and I've taught at every level from elementary school to undergraduate college. Obviously, before I was green, I worked as a substitute teacher, and I was a teaching assistant and a student teacher as a graduate student, all that. So I like parents. Kids are all right most of the time. Most kids, right? They're to some. I don't know. You've already broken them before I get to meet them. I don't know what you did to them, but yeah, every now and then. But yeah, like the thing about kids is, again, like, and everybody knows, right? It's the standard cliched stuff. Kids are open-minded. Kids are cool. When kids see me, if they're young enough for this, they're either old enough that they've got their own identity and they're going to react to me based on what I'm sending at them. So that's under my control to a point. But when they're at a certain age, or not even age, but there's a certain level of maturity and development where they're still always looking to the adults around them for how to react. So that's when the guy comes over and goes, "Oh my God, look at him! Isn't he scary?" And pulls and like basically coaches a bad reaction out of their kid. That is the stuff that sort of pisses me off. I think the worst thing though around these kids is that the people that tell their kids like not to stare. Like, if your kid's coming up and trying to touch me or something, like, I'm like, and I understand like the whole stare thing, but I'm like, let the kid look. Like, I'd stare at me. I do. Like,
Totally.
When the first time,
you're not going to be surprised, right?
If I walk around the corner and I see another heavily modified person, which happens, I mean, I'm not the only person. Like, there are lots of more and more all the time. So if I see somebody that's heavily modified, you bet your ass I stare. I'm going like, I wonder how big their ears are.
Right.
Oh, that kind of looks like the way that Steve might have split their toe. I'm analyzing, I'm looking, I'm staring. I'm like, why the hell not? I'm doing the same thing I do when I go look at art, when I look at architecture, when I see a beautiful scene in nature. Stare. Just don't be it. Like, I think it's one of these things where people like to pretend that there's like this weird gray area between doing something inappropriately and not doing something inappropriately. Like, well, they were staring, but they were. I was like, no, you absolutely know whether that or you're just you're basically textbook sociopath if you can't tell. Like, if I'm with grieving family members and we're crying, don't fucking stare at us, right? No. If I'm eating lunch somewhere, you can look all you want. Who cares? Right. So, like, I feel like a lot of the problem is that the people who want to take advantage of gray area cases are constantly pushing into the public dialogue but what if, and if you start stripping away these hypotheticals to things that have actually happened to real people in the world more than once without them trying to force it to happen. Some people be like, oh, I went down somewhere and they were very rude to me. We're like, well, how long did you spend provoking them? Right? Sort of deals and that, and like, but it shouldn't matter. Well, yeah, I guess if we're having a graduate school level discussion of theoretical ethics, it shouldn't matter whether or not the action was provoked under some ethical systems, right? It doesn't matter if you had a reason, you still did something that isn't allowed, right? Like, but that's not real, right? How many times in the world do we see somebody go like, they're like, oh, it shouldn't matter that I did whatever that provoked them. You're like, well, yeah, you have kind of a point, but everybody who lives in the real world understands that talk shit, get hit's a real thing.
Totally. totally.
You know, if you're just finding that out as an adult, well, I mean, maybe I envy your childhood. It was real sheltered.
Yeah, totally. So, Courtney,
Okay.
does that go into your next question, or we're not there?
Okay, the last question.
Last question.
Yeah, last question.
One of my favorites.
Okay, to you, Erik, the Lizardman, if you could go back in time to meet your child self, what would you tell them and why?
You know, this is a variation on a pretty common hypothetical. So it's not the first time I've thought about it, but the problem is like immediately all the problems that I've already like all the problems pop up. Like it's gonna be like I feel like I would have to, if I was gonna be effective. Like number one, I don't like these sort of things anyway, these weird hypotheticals, because the reason that I don't regret a lot of things is because I feel like in that situation, unless you somehow gave me outside knowledge and a do-over, right, I would do the same thing again. Like it's not that I haven't made mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I've probably made a dozen mistakes in the last 2 hours talking with you guys, right? But I make them honestly. So if you say, if you could go back in time and redo it, would you? I'd be like, well, sure, I'd love to undo any mistake that I've done, or maybe even give myself an advantage, with what team to bet on, sort of thing, like, or who to invest in, like that. But that's not realistically going back in time. Realistically going back in time, it's like, okay, all I've got is what I had then, so I'm going to do the same thing over again. Like, it's like saying, what would I do in this situation? Turns out I've already done it. I've already been in that situation. We already know what the answer is. So they're like, if you send you back to do it again, what are you going to do? Same thing I did last time. I'm an idiot. What do you?
I think that's the best answer we've gotten. That you would go back and tell yourself, do
but
what you're going to do.
The other version of that I think is people. I was like, if you know that you're talking to your old self, sort of thing like that, which I think is weird because I'm like, dude, the change I know now, like, when you think about yourself, and you have to be a certain age or at least had a certain amount of experiences for this to apply to you. Some people age a lifetime in 18 years, some never, get maturity. But there's certain things like when something that you really felt like a value, you change a value. And I'll give you like my own personal one is I very vividly know the me that used to believe in the death penalty. And I know the me today that doesn't. And I remember very, very vividly the process I went through that changed my mind. And I also know, who I was then and who I am now. There is the only thing I could say to pass me that would, change my mind is what did change my mind. So if I had gotten that argument earlier, would it have had any effect on me? I mean, probably it would have started the erosion of my commitment to death. It might have started those balls rolling sooner, but that's the only thing that could have done it. And I don't know that I was able to hear that argument until that point in my life. Right. So if you had gone back far enough, I would have I was already capable earlier in life of understanding that argument to the point where it would have changed my mind, but I wouldn't have given you the chance to tell it to me. That's who I was back then. It's a matter of it's that Doug is like, what do you want to tell your younger self? Nothing they'd fucking listen to.
Right.
I know who I was. I wouldn't have changed my mind. I needed to go through some stuff first, and I needed to see and hear some other things before I would even consider that new message.
So that's another.
It's like going back in time is not going to fix it.
That's another interesting spin on the question. It's almost like, well, my younger self would tell my older self to fuck off.
Very much so. Yeah, but my younger self would tell my older self, would probably because a lot of the value shifts, and I haven't had a lot of big ones, but they're always motivated by what I now feel is the better rational argument. And it was literally I had to be willing enough to go digging for a rational argument that defeated the one I had a pro death penalty argument that I thought was rock solid, but I wasn't really trying to test it until I got to a point in my life where I was like, no, you can't be this confident about this if you haven't really tried to take it apart. And when I tried to take it apart, I was like, oh shit, yeah, I can rip that right apart.
Right apart, yeah.
I was like, Turns out I'm exactly the opposite. But what's weird about that is like, so in this particular case, this is sort of like laying out my own personal journey here for you guys. But so I didn't change any of my ethical values. I just realized some stuff that I was overlooking in the real world application of death penalty cases. So my problem was I was entirely theoretical, and based on my value set, I could still be, without changing my values, I could be pro death penalty because I was ignoring or ignorant of one very simple fact about the death penalty, which is every criminal justice system will commit errors, which means every death penalty will inevitably kill an innocent person. And one innocent death is too many, so that's why I won't support the death penalty.
There you go. Awesome.
So yeah, I maintained my ethical values, but changed the outcome of my,
Right.
the equation.
Right.
So, do you think your kid self would, if you like travel back in time to see your kid self?
My kid self, like seeing me on TV, like remember, like this comes from being influenced by Ripley's and Guinness and stuff like that. Like my kid self would be all about me. Like if I am anything, I am a tribute to the unbridled dreams of child me. I have, because like I said, like if you would, I was told all my life, like, you could do anything you want, and then finally went, really, anything? Because I'm going to get wacky with it if it's going to be anything. But there was that element. Like, it was one of those things where it's like it was always, you can do anything you want within the given realm of possibilities, and I was like, but what if I want to go outside the realm of possibility? What seems to be outside the realm of possibility?
Well, I think that you certainly did do that, and in doing that, you actually stretched the realm of possibility.
That is kind of the point. One of the points, one of the ideas that was in there was always to sort of it's an old trope in Sideshow as well, which is that the things we're doing aren't impossible; they just seem impossible. Right. The impossible made possible. It's a nice tagline. I always like to say, like, this may seem impossible, but as you're about to see, it's entirely possible.
That's right.
But it's unlikely. Sort of it's proving that the boundaries aren't where they seem to be. It's like, what you're about to see, your current beliefs about the world will tell you that this should not be possible. That I should be dead or horrifically injured. But the fact that I'm not, and I'm happily still conversing with you, should be your first big clue that what you think are the walls around you aren't. Those aren't the real ones. The limitations that we're all running on software limitations.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. I gotta say, this has been such an amazing conversation. I'm going to be thinking about this for days. I'm going to formally, I don't know when, but we would definitely love to have you back and have some more conversation with you.
I'd love to come back sometime.
So much fun hearing about
Courtney, you've got my email and whatnot now. You can throw dates at me. And like I say, like, as it goes right now, things are fairly sparse for me, so I'm home a lot. So it's just fun to do. It's nice to jump online and have a fun conversation.
Or just email you like, hey, want to come back on the show?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And Wednesdays aren't a hard day, so not right now anyway. Who knows what the future holds?
Maybe on Wednesdays.
We do have another comment from Madison who is telling us that kids hate it.
Oh, they can be evil as hell.
Oh yeah, I know.
That's hysterical. So normally we ask for like parting words of wisdom, but I feel like this whole show has been words of wisdom, and really, like I said, a testament to
stay hydrated.
Yeah,
that's good.
The idea of
drink your water,
of
kids.
knowing what you want.
One time I almost had bumper stickers in it because I had this little joke. It was for a street show thing, and because the stickers are a nice thing after the show. They put money in the hat, get a sticker. And I was like, I was going to do this whole joke about how I just wanted to come up with a message that anybody could get behind. And I tried to like love each other. No, you can like accept everyone. No, and I was like, there's always this. I was like, just stay hydrated. That's all I got. It was good. And I was just going to be like, just because there's already these stickers that you can buy for that I found that at this officer, like a big roll of them, whatever. I'm like, I'm just giving up. Stay hydrated.
That's amazing. Awesome. Brilliant. Well, Courtney, I don't know if you've got any parting words, but this has blown my mind. This has made me so happy to have you here, Erik. And I know that in your website you're like, what do you like to be called? And I was gonna call you Lizardman just because it seems like that's what you like, but I feel like this is a more person to person conversation, finding out who you are, you know, and then talking
much like we talked about before about, you know, the context of whether or not something's acceptable or not. Like in the real world, it's usually not this very tricky landmine filled arena that people like to make it out to be. It's like, you know, so I'm like, yeah. And there's 99.9% of people are able to just very instinctively and intuitively understand when Lizardman is appropriate, when Erik is appropriate, when either one goes, you know. And then though there are those people who just like demand, like they try to demand attention by using Erik, right? Or they have to like make a big point out of the fact that Lizardman is not a common Christian name in Western civilization. Like, yeah, I get it. It's Lizardman. I picked the silly name. You don't have to be like, oh, we've got this guy here calling himself, what is it, Lizardman? You know, people will pull stuff like that. And I'm like,
right.
Dude, what do you like? I'll do the goofy shit. That's why I'm here.
Totally. Well, and on this show, again, we love that we have a friend who came to the show named Sunshine, and she picked that name, and she is that. She created what she wanted to be. You know what I mean? Again, the same thing with the intention, and it's just
this is a respect of a time. I mean, when it comes out to, because you know, names and pronouns and things like that are something that's been kind of an issue for a while. How are you gonna address it? Like, it's weird for me, and part of the problem is that, you know, I view this as an old person and a philosophy person. So I just kind of look at it and I go, look, when someone tells you their name, right, it's not, oh, if it's not on the standard list of names in my head, I get to do whatever the fuck I want, right? If you say to me, hi, I'm Michael, I go, hey, Mikey, Mickey, and you're like, but that's what I'm going to call you because that's what you seem like to me, right? Or you don't look like a Mike, I'm going to call you a Bob. Like, look, and then people go, yeah, well, but it's not really about names. See, you're trying to make it about something silly. We're talking about something real, like about whether or not it's a man or a woman. So, like, look, either you respect people's right to determine themselves, or you don't. Now, I'm not going to tell you what decision to make. And I know right now you're thinking, well, it's not a decision. They don't get to make a decision. But I'm telling you, you live in a world where it turns out, yeah, it is a decision. So if you want to decide that it's not, what I'm going to do is walk you down the philosophical road you just took that leads to your absolute lack of free will and fascist bootlicking that you probably won't really behind. But just because you're so angry that somebody said something that doesn't, just because somebody called a cat a dog and you can't laugh, you know, or it's like, no, I named my dog cat, or I named my cat dog. I can do whatever. Yeah, just because you're a C- student in an advanced linguistics class doesn't mean I'm going to feel bad for you. Yeah, again, we teach to the slowest member of the class. We do not allow them to teach.
Absolutely.
So it's like, look, I understand you're having a hard time with this concept, but tough luck. It's part of the world you live in. Because somebody like, yeah, you know what? I've known a million people. Well, not a million. I've known most people who mathematically simply cannot grasp gravity. It's still holding them to the planet.
Absolutely.
So it's like,
you don't have to understand.
You can have the hardest time in the world grasping trans or whatever the thing it is that breaks your brain, but it's not going to go away.
That's right. There was a saying that says, you can dislike the snow, but I forget the saying. Something about there'll still be snow, and if you dislike it, you're just gonna have less joy because
right. Well,
you decided that you don't like the snow.
Yeah, be angry about it. Yeah. Do you want you want to be angry or do you want to be happy? You'd be like, how can I be happy when there's some person over there claiming there's something they're not? How exactly does that affect you? I'm like, you know what? I can be happy. You can look. Look at me. There are flat earthers, and I'm still happy. You want to talk about the absolute bottom of the barrel, straight up, undeniable, stupid. Somebody literally getting in your face and being like, "No, this is the way things are," and you being like, "Look, I've got all the evidence in existence that says that you're wrong." And like, well, hey, what am I going to do? Be mad about it? No, I'm going to be like, "Oh, so that guy's wrong, and I'm over here enjoying myself."
Exactly. There's a lot of strange people out there, and the funny thing is, none of these people in this screen right now are those people. We're kind of all the good normal people.
Well, this is a thing that I feel like it didn't work for me in stand up that well as a joke because it's too close to the truth. Where I used to get on stage and be like, "Look, I'm here today as somebody who has done all of this to himself to tell you that." All the authority figures in your youth were right. You do not want to tattoo your face. You don't want to run away and join the circus. You don't want to live every day as if it's to the fullest, because if you do that, you're gonna end up like me, fucking happy.
Totally.
And my point ended up being, I did this whole little monologue that it would go into, is like, if you want to be happy, you've got to be weird, because depressed has become normal.
Yeah.
I remember I worked as a bartender for years. I sat around and I watched. Apparently, this is from observation. What it seems to me normal people do is they get together and they have misery contests. Some guy walks in and goes, "Oh, my wife is giving me a bunch of shit, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, well, my boss fucked this up. My truck broke down, blah, blah, blah." Like, all they do is they get in and they're like, "Oh, hey, here's what's wrong. Here's what's my shitty thing. Here's the shitty thing I'm dealing with. Here's the shit." And I understand, like, yes, there has to be a certain level of support between all this, but it's become this overwhelming thing where bringing up a good thing is almost like, "What's wrong with you? You bragging motherfucker. Like, how dare you brag? How dare you not be suffering like us?" I'm like, what I see as normal is complaining about things. What I see as abnormal around me are people who are really enjoying themselves. And I don't mean put on the front, because that's a whole other horrible thing. Like, yeah, you know what to say and you know how to act, but I can see the hollowness.
Right.
It too, which is
totally. And that's what I was saying to you earlier. Like, I can see your authentic self. You know what I mean? It's not you are happy, and that's what we're all about here. We are all about being strange, being wonderful, and being happy about it. I've got to wrap it up because we are over 2 hours. But
I know.
Again, Erik,
I was like, whoa.
It doesn't even feel like it.
I keep looking at it too, being like, "Oh shit, yeah, we got to wrap this up."
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much for an amazing episode. We will definitely have you back. I'm going to probably get your information from Courtney.
Yeah, you get it from Courtney.
And I'm going to reach out to you. I do want to talk to you about your website. I know if you are looking for help. I don't know if you get people who offer some help, but
it is actually meant to be kind of a lo-fi labor of love. Like, I mentioned before, having a website before Red Lobster. And what happened was, there was a point years ago where it became so much of a chore and part of the business that I ended up neglecting it just out of like, I don't want to do this work anymore because I'm trying to keep up. Look, back in HTML3 and Flash, I was great, but I haven't kept up the skills, right? Do I? But I thought about when I had the most fun with it, and that was in the beginning when it was almost entirely. So I'm basically downgrading my website intentionally, and I'm pulling back on a lot of social media just because I don't like the walls. Like, I picked up a random shadow ban on Instagram the other day because committing the crime of promoting my friends' shows and enjoying local venues. So and posting it made me look like a bot, and it looks like some of that's coming back after I took it. But anyway, I'm like, I'm going to have total control. If I do it on my website, and I'm going to go back to just like, hey, look, this was my note in a bottle thrown out into the sea of the internet back in 1996 when I first put up a web page, right? And I'm like, I'm going to go back to that. And anybody who wants to me, I'm like, I don't always respond, but I read everything. And, and the social media is not built for messaging properly anyway. It annoys me. I don't like the structure of it because I miss messages because, one day you'll get 1,000, the next day you'll get 12. And, it's hard to keep track of what you've done. But with email, I can stay on top of stuff. So like if people email me, and again, it's hard to tell, but if I feel like it's a genuine and sincere request or message, then they get a genuine and sincere response.
Awesome.
Sometimes they get links to hellish porn, whatever.
And that works too, right? If you're in the right mood at the right moment, it works.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes they need a gentle word of encouragement. Sometimes they need the stick.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, we're going to have you back. We'll talk to you soon in the next couple of days about when that's going to happen. I know I'm excited. I really and much appreciative of your time, man. This was probably my favorite episode to date. So thank you.
Fantastic. It's great talking with you guys, and we'll see you again soon.
We'll see you back soon.
Bye, Lizardman.
Peace. Oh, hold on.